very much. Okay. Welcome to the August 27th, 2019 Budget Workshop and other items. We are asking that anybody who wishes to, on the days who wishes to speak in person on audience, just make a motion to have a recess, and I'll second it. But otherwise, we're not going to have discussion between board members and people in the audience, okay? Also, this is kind of standard now. Please understand that if there's talking in the audience, please refrain from that, go outside. If you resist the suggestion that you cease that, then you'll be escorted outside. So that's kind of my speech for right now, and also at the meeting. We need to, this is a orderly meeting. We're going to maintain it as such. Okay, the first item in the on the agenda is public comments. I'm going to turn it over to the vice chair.
I don't see anybody newbies on the list for public comment today, so I don't think I need to read our long policy, but I'll start with Mr. Nelson. After Mr. Nelson is Mrs. Mendel.
Got a handout for you. I'm Norm Nelson, citizen. Mr. Chair, fellow board members. I'm going to take this opportunity today to review some incidents. Number one, the front page you'll get is just a copy from your CAFR report dated January.
Thank you.
And I wonder if anybody pays attention to this paragraph in the middle, it's in yellow. It says, this report will provide the taxpayers of the school district, which I am, with financial data in a format enable them to gain an understanding of the financial affairs of the district. I wonder if you have to do that. I've been here for 7 years talking about your finances and many things. And in the 7 years, I've never talked to two people that know how much you spend. When you ask them what the budget of the school is, you get it ranges from 800 to 800 to $1 billion. And I'll give you some examples how easy it is. If you look at page 2, you look at 17, 18, depending upon when you look at it, is what numbers you get. So this particular page shows the AFR, shows the CAFR report, budget report, in green is mine. I've added up those pages and figures. And then your board budget forecast. You notice it's 767 million, 761, 818, 768. No wonder people don't understand, and you do nothing about it. I've included some of those pages, what I quoted, and then if you look at page 6, there's my calculation, which I showed you last week. That's how it takes to add up. Add up. And the other one is, you can just go through, what they have questions on is page 8. Because you refer to this as transferring funds. You transfer from capital to debt and also to general. But this is the explanation of the general fund. The general fund is used to provide the salaries, benefits of employees, classroom teachers, school principals, school secretaries, school custodians, are also used to buy supplies such as classroom books, library books, classroom supplies, and floor wax. In addition, these monies provide for such expenses as school utilities. Then why do you transfer capital money to it? Why do you transfer, if this is really the responsibility of the general fund, why do you transfer it? Don't explain that. Don't explain that. And then I think one other point out is looking at page 11. I added this at the last moment. When you look at your reports, time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on down, Mrs. Mendel. After Mrs. Mendel, Ms. Canese.
Not
not really sure where to start. It's the same thing as we said last time. I can go through page by page. I sent you pictures, you know, I took pictures of the changes that we wanted made. But it's you know, same old, same old. We rewrote a waiver that we took Sarasota's waiver and we took Palm Beach County's waiver. We melded them together. Dr. Hopes asked me to add a section about making sure parents understand what graduation requirements are. So I've sent that to you previously. So here, you know, on page 31, principal approval should not be necessary for a waiver. And then when you read the actual waiver we've been using for the last couple of years, it's been incredibly punitive. 2 years or more of passing FSA scores, or you can never get out. So we have these children trapped in this cycle year after year, and it was mind-blowing. It's my own fault I didn't read it. But boy, did we really get snowed, because our plan stated something very specific, and the waiver ruled it out. And I went, I'm still shocked. I'm really kind of in shock about a lot of things, but this is particularly one of them. Page 32, to take a child who's in a remedial course and deny them PE and recess is just so wrong. That's on page 32. It's got to come out. These are children that need movement the most. Page 33, I guess, asked that you please include the waiver, make it very clear and easy to find. I mean, we were using a waiver that you all didn't even approve. You all didn't even see the waiver. It wasn't ever included in any draft. And it was this big mysterious thing to try to find it. That was the worst part of it all. And then when, I'd struggle with administration at some of these schools, and they'd say, Bridget, have you read it? And I said, well, no, I never needed to. And when I read it, I was really, really, really upset. And they said, I don't have any other choice but to deny these children. I cannot. This is my law. This is what I'm what I'm held to. So it's still kind of disturbing. Page 39 for middle schoolers, you have you can't get an advanced class unless you have both teacher, counselor, administrator recommendation, and the passing score. This has got to be changed. It's so incredibly punitive. It's the dumbing down of our children in Manatee County, and I don't understand it. Grading benchmarks, page 42, is so important. Please stop grading benchmarks. Sometimes benchmarks have a pretest in them, which is what a lot of you all up here don't understand. And when you are grading children on material that they've never seen before, you are destroying their GPAs, which could keep that child from a Bright Future scholarship or other things. It's just bizarre to me.
Becky Canese and then Mrs. Patterson.
Members of the board, superintendent. For the record, I'm Becky Kness, the executive director of Just for Girls. I'm representing a group, the students at Just for Girls, the teachers that we serve and provide these services with, and the families that we serve. I'm commenting on the general budget that's coming up in your board meeting tonight. We are requesting equality in funding for our teachers. We are requesting that we can be competitive with high-quality teachers, that we be competitive with the highest quality of education for these most vulnerable students that we serve. And there is no other funding available for this basic education teacher equity funding. We have other funding for other purposes that we have sought successfully for social workers, counselors, interventionists, and the like, before school, after school, and summer programs. But this funding is for teacher equity and pay, for a high-quality education, and so that we can be competitive in providing the highest quality of education for these students. And we're declaring that no other funding is available for this purpose, and all those reasons that are important for this education to be approved, because it echoes exactly what you asked the voters to approve when they approved the millage. Your request was approved by the voters, and our request to you has not yet been approved. The voters not only approved it, but they paid for it. And they're trusting you to disseminate these funds that we've all invested in these students, and these are district students, who deserve this high-quality education. The alternative programs have been left behind in your budget. They are the students who most need the higher quality teachers who can cope with the sort of challenges that these students have been faced with. Today is the 99th anniversary of the 19th Amendment being passed, giving women the right to vote. Some things are worth fighting for, and some things are worth not giving up on. I have hope in those of you who have said you would vote for this, but have not yet done so. Some of the reasons include that you didn't want to vote for the entire list of alternative sites. I would suggest that you take them one at a time. Only one of the 10 has come before you, and you can examine each one individually. You have the resources in your budget that the taxpayers have approved for the education of these district students. You also have the Citizens Financial Advisory Board, who looked at this carefully and studied it and unanimously approved support for these alternative sites. You also have your department leadership that have voiced their desire to stand with us in requesting and support for this funding. So we have your Citizens Financial Advisory Board, we have the voters, and we have your own leadership, but we do not yet have you. And so for those who know me, they would not be surprised to learn that I've done my homework. And what I believe is happening has political and personal reasons behind it that are fear-based. Courageous leadership, like Charlie Kennedy and Reverend Golden, is what's needed when we elect representatives in times like this to do the right thing. You have to put these students first, ahead of any political agenda or any personal reservations that you have, and how it may affect you personally. This is for the rights of these students. Courageous leadership is rewarded at the polls, and it's respected in the workplace. I'm not giving up on these girls, and I don't want you to either. The voters approved this, the citizens approved it, your leadership have took a stand in our favor for this, and I want you to join that movement. This is the right thing to do, and everybody seems to know it except you. And it is never wrong to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Patterson, come on down.
Hi, my name is Jessica Patterson. I'm a Lakewood Ranch resident with Children in the Public School. I'm just here to talk about the student progression plan and the decision tree. I wanted to touch with what Bridget was saying, just to add on page 52, the acceleration and enrichment program. We have that a student must have a 3.0 grade point average and a level 3 or higher on the FSA. We are on ACE and IB. They don't even require test scores, but we are making it even harder for these kids to get in that are the best and brightest. We shouldn't be making it be able to have both things. So they do obviously need to have a high grade, a higher grade point average, but making them have a high test score too is not fair. And I just wanted to touch on the decision tree. So Gina, thank you very much for sending me that last week. I did see, Ms. Yost, that you sent another one to Stacy and that you made changes. And again, there was no red line changes again. So I'm not sure, and what I'm having a problem with is that you added iReady tools for instruction under explicit, systematic, and multisensory interventions, which iReady is none of those things. We also have leveled literacy intervention and fountain and panel phonics, which are the same thing. Again, they're listed twice, like we're offering two different things, but it's the same exact thing. Imagine learning is not multisensory or explicit or systematic. So I don't understand why these things are listed under here. I know when I spoke with Gina that it was maybe organization, but iReady was not in This one, it's listed under with Wonders, under Tier 2 on page 1, Wonders, iReady, literacy footprints, and then under the explicit, systematic, and multisensory, iReady is not listed there, and then it was added here. So it's none of those things, and a lot of other things aren't explicit multisensory, and we keep on putting our kids on these things who are the most vulnerable, and we are not giving them proper tools. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. The next item on our agenda is the workshop item, capital budget. And Heather Jenkins is going to lead off with that. And we have Stephanie Raviello. Okay.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Saunders, staff and community. Today, we will talk about our capital budget plan and what's in it. And I have with me Janet Clossy, who is our she is our capital accountant, and I also have Jane Drager, our Director of Construction Services. In case we have any, they're in our audience, in case we have any deep dive questions that they may need to address for us. So first of all, we'll start off with a fiscal year 1920 recap. We have a pie chart that shows you what portion of our capital funds, how our capital funds are made up. You can see when we started 1920, we had a pretty large beginning fund balance due to the construction projects that we still had going on with our 3 new schools. We had our district capital tax millages at 56 million, sales tax around 31, impact fees at 17. We also have proceeds from capital leases and proceeds from property sales, and then other miscellaneous funding. For our 1819 capital expenditure recap, the largest portion of our funds was spent on school and facility projects, 106 million, 18 million for maintenance and repairs, 7.6 on technology, 1.2 for equipment or buses. We had 16.1 in transfers, 30 million in debt service to pay our debt service payments, and our total appropriations were almost 180 million with an available reserve of 63 million. So as we look into our fiscal year 2020 plan, we show our actual fiscal year 1819 expenses as compared to our 1920 projections. So as you can see, we project our ad valorem revenue to increase about 6% from 56 million to 60 million. We think our capital outlay and debt service will decrease about 22%. Those are from motor vehicle licenses. Capital outlay and debt service interest will also go down in relation to that. PICO will remain close to consistent. It decreases about $873. Charter school capital outlay has increased 10%. If we think back to last year, that had increased in the prior year as well. Sales tax revenue is up. Our impact fee revenue is down a little bit, about 11%. Fuel tax refund, we've estimated our budget at $950,000, which is about 90% higher than it was last year. And then our interest is, we always start a little lower, but our interest is significantly lower this year. And our beginning fund balance, you will note that it has dropped down. That's because we're completing our construction projects and we're making those final payments.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Board Member Welch.
Thank you. What's the explanation for the rather dramatic increase in the fuel tax refund?
Let me check with my capital accountant.
I mean, are we like using more fuel, different fuel? Anything changed with the legislature? That's a pretty significant increase.
We did receive a couple notices that were forwarded to the, pardon me?
I know, but we're budgeting almost $1 million.
We will look into that and provide you with an answer shortly.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Holmes.
Projected fees for our 1920 capital revenue. The total amount of capital revenue that we anticipate receiving is $176.5 million. You'll see a large portion of that is our beginning fund balance that we've carried forward to pay our existing projects. Ad valorem taxes, which is our 1.5 mil, and then sales tax. The other types of fees make up smaller portions of our capital revenue. Our fiscal year 2020 tentative capital plan, we have $6.2 million left to expend for Barbara Harvey Elementary School. We have a Gullet Elementary addition, Terra Elementary School renovation. We'll get into greater detail on some of these in a few of the later slides. McNeil, we have a traffic modification project budgeted. Onika, front office relocation. Seabreeze has drainage issues that we're addressing. Willis Elementary addition. Witt Elementary renovation, this is a portion of the project, along with an addition and a roof. We're working on Braden River Middle, Wakeland-Johnson Johnson-Wakeland traffic improvements, Johnson-Wakeland HVAC, Johnson exterior walkway surfaces, remaining balance on Dr. Mona Jane Elementary School and Sugg Middle School.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Board Member Holmes.
Johnson Wakeland HVAC. Didn't we just finish Johnson Wakeland with regards to like building a whole new Wakeland campus?
Johnson, we renovated Johnson, yes. There is some work. Ms. Dreger. I'm going to call our construction expert to come help us.
I mean, I thought we like finished that and then we got $4.5 million for HVAC.
What we did there was an addition, and we renovated building 2 and parts of building 1. So it's basically all of the middle school. Like, we didn't touch the gym and the multipurpose room, we didn't touch the music, the labs, and the middle school classrooms, which are buildings 3, 4, and 5
Okay.
on the campus. We didn't touch them.
HVAC wasn't included in
We
any of
didn't
that?
touch them. We knew that going in, that we weren't gonna touch it, because we had to get done with the addition, and we said, but we have to put that HVAC renovation on a plan and at some time in the near future, because the controls don't even talk to each other.
Okay, so if you would do me a favor, sometime in the future, give me, when we are able to say we have completed the Johnson Wakeland, what do we call it? It's not Johnson Wakeland anymore, is it? Did we change?
Johnson,
Okay. Johnson International, whatever school.
It's the
Can you just-
Louise R.
can-
Johnson
would
International
you-
Baccalaureate School.
Well, it's not International Baccalaureate because we're not allowed to call it that anymore. So, Johnson, can you tell me when we expect to complete it and what the total cost
yeah, absolutely.
is anticipated to be?
Yeah, not off the top of my head. This project here that is listed is starting a 2 or 3 year project, so I would have to capture all of that. I think it's somewhere around 12 million total that we'll spend, and we spent 7 and change,
Okay, so we've
7.4.
only spent 7 of what was budgeted to be about 12?
No, the total would be those 2 added together, the 7.4 and the 12.5.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board, Vice Chair Messenger.
Don't go anywhere. I saw that Onika front office relocation is on here, and if I remember on the facility assessment study, they were one of the 8 schools that was considered in poor condition. So my question is, I'm assuming because of that, that in the next couple of years, there's gonna be an intention to remodel that school. And certainly an office relocation is an immediate need for security reasons. Will that, interfere with future renovations?
No, we did that this summer, so this portion on here is just what will spend July 1st to now.
Okay.
This was done over the summer to have guests come into the north side of the campus now, and we fenced and put portals all around the school, so you don't have to walk into that interior courtyard any longer. And we did it that way in hopes that whenever they renovate it, that will continue to be the front of the school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Board Member Golden.
Apparently, some of these projects will begin this year and end this year. And some of these projects will begin this year, but they will only end in subsequent years.
Correct.
Is it correct to say that some began before this year?
Absolutely. All three of the new schools.
Okay, then it would be helpful to me if there was an explanation that I could look at to see that I'm not looking at $1 million restoration, Tara Elementary School renovations, $1 million. If that's this year, that's fine, but if it's this year plus next year, a breakout.
Some of those are, like she referenced, so Tara, my glasses on, Braden River Middle and Sug Middle will be included in the slides going forward. Those are new projects. Everything else that's on here is a carryover.
And we can give you listings of what we've spent in prior fiscal years and what we anticipate to spend in the future. We have that we can provide to the
I
board.
appreciate it. My memory is just not that good. That I can-
Construction never quite correlates to fiscal year accounting. Project accounting is never quite the same.
I understand that.
We struggle with that.
And I understand that. That's why I want the information, because it helps me to decide whether to approve this or not. Because some of these things are standalone and will get done, and others are gonna be carried over, and I'd hate to say, no, I don't want that to happen, when $7 million of it has already been spent to make it happen at a particular school.
Yes, the board will vote on this at the September 10th meeting for the final budget. We'll be sure to get you that information this week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Golden.
I'd like to go back to the fuel tax. It should have been, it's 95,000 on our actual schedule. So that's the slide. It's been 90 to 95. So we have our giant schedule here. We'll refer to.
Thank you.
So that's a negative change.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's from
It's a reduction
98 down to 95, it's about a 3 or 4%.
It's consistent with prior years. It was between 90 and 95 over the last 4
Okay.
years.
All right. Could the same thing be said for the interest, or is that another reason? We had $1.770 million of actual interest that we received, but we only expect 200,000 in this year.
That's because we're spending down our balance of our fund balance. Would be
Okay.
why the interest would decrease.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we were at high school. We have Bayshore High School STEM lab renovations. Manatee High, we're going to replace the grandstands. Parish Community High, Palmetto High Campus drainage, high school tracks, rubberized high school tracks for select schools. Harley, that's going to be a multi-year project. Harley campus roof, SSC renovation and HVAC for this building, PSC HVAC and building envelope and roof repair, SSC generator and UPS replacement. And then we have our uninsured property losses, which we pay for from capital funds, roof replacement for maintenance.
Excuse me, Board Member, or Kennedy, you had a question?
I do. Thank you. Heather, this may be a better question for Jane or for the superintendent, but I'm just curious about the number for the Palmetto High drainage. I know last time the superintendent and I talked, we're in the process of an engineering study, correct? And then, so I guess my question is, the projected 620,000, was that number formulated before the deluge and a reminder of the kind of drainage issues, and that could be more or less, yeah.
Okay, Superintendent?
Yes, sir, that's just a tentative guesstimation number. We do not, of course, have the study back, so whatever the report says, if it's more than that, we will definitely come back and make you aware and adjust that spending. So we just kind of put a placeholder with a tentative amount based on past thoughts, but we are having an engineer look at it, so it could be a completely different number when they're finished.
One follow-up, Mr. Chair? Or
Sure.
Two follow-ups. Two related follow-ups. One, when can we expect that study back? And second, could you remind me about what was done over the summer to try to alleviate this problem?
In the summer, our maintenance department made sure that all of the drains on our side were cleared and clean of debris, because sometimes that causes a backup. The engineer firm, Jane, there you are, was just hired. I'm not sure if they gave you a tentative timeline of when they thought the study would, how long it would take.
He went and met with the principal on Monday, just yesterday.
Okay.
And
A couple weeks.
we did encourage him to work not only with the city of Palmetto's Public Works Department, but also the county, because it could be tied to multiple issues of water backing up on the school. So we're hoping to have a comprehensive study with a comprehensive plan. And I'm sure that if it does entail more than us, that all entities, we're gonna work together to get it solved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Board member, okay. Vice Chair Messenger?
Well, I stole some of my questions, but I do have one other question. As I mentioned the facility study before, and I see a lot of the schools that were in the poor condition are being addressed, like Brighton River Middle was on there as a poor condition, Sugg was a poor condition, Oneiko, Witt, Tara were all poor condition, I remember that. And I asked for, and I haven't got it yet, and I think I asked for it yesterday, and it's not gonna come from you, so you don't have to take a note of this. I asked for the Manatee High facility study documentation, just because I kind of wondered about the grandstands, and really where that was coming in, and if that was something that was found in the facility study, since that's listed on here. Like I said, it seemed like we were addressing a lot of other things that were mentioned in that study, and I appreciate that. I think that was the purpose of that study, so I just didn't know if that was mentioned in there.
It was.
It was?
But we have known about that for a long time.
And what was mentioned, it's just a safety issue?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the original home stands are from the late 20s, and we have had Todd's done some studies in maintenance, and they're okay to use, but it's not in good shape.
Okay. And is that a multi-year project, or is that the expected budget?
That'll definitely be multi-year, because we'll probably have to do it in the summer, and our summer projects almost always cross 2 fiscal years. The one that's just ending and the one that's beginning.
So is the project expected to cost more than $1 million?
$1.2 million is the total for that one.
Okay.
Board member Golden?
Yes, sir. Are these projects being presented to us in any type of priority? I know that we have had previous discussions about urgent and really needed and really necessary, but the way they're presented here, is there any?
Not on this slide, but as we move forward with the presentation, we have it broken down into priority and why some of these projects have been selected. So when we put together the plan, we did it based off the facility assessment and also any type of safety or immediate maintenance need that we had to address. So we used those 3 components to develop the tentative capital plan.
And,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair,
go ahead, Board member Golden.
other than safety and I'm I don't know how we would do it or how we incorporate this into the consideration that is just being born with respect to Palmetto High, and that's the inclusion of the flooding issue. And I have no knowledge at all about engineering, but I know that if you cover up porous ground, then you got to figure out how to drain water into the rest of the ground that you have. And none of our schools exist in a vacuum. I'll use that. So how do we incorporate the consideration of the changing needs of our schools into the need to update, in the need to have our infrastructure that surrounds the schools to keep pace with the needs of that school. And right now, I'm thinking not only of Palmetto, which is probably the most extreme case, but I'm thinking of Lakewood Ranch High School, I'm thinking of Braden River Middle School, and probably there are some other schools where you just can't overlook the water. I mean, I don't care how quickly it runs off, when it comes, it disrupts. And I've heard all the anecdotal evidence about we never had this much rain before. Well, that's fine, but it's going to come again. And if we're talking about a 5-year capital plan, how do we incorporate not just safety and how can we make that an urgent need? Mr. Chair.
Okay, Madam Superintendent.
Yes, sir. In addition to looking at what we need to do with capital money in either updating our facility or expanding our facility, we are looking at some zoning issues. One of those things we've already agreed upon with the board, and we're going to start that process very shortly. But what we will find with some of our schools that are overcrowded, zones were created many, many years ago that need to be relooked at. I'm going to give you an example. One is Gullet Elementary. We are busing students that live right across the street from Manatee Elementary, taking them past 3 schools, and we're taking them to Gullet. Okay. So when we start that process, some of the overcrowding issues hopefully will be addressed with the community input and schools input on our rezoning situations so that we can be better prepared for the growth. That we are addressing those that actually live right there or in the boundaries right after there. So if we are bringing students to areas that really is not anywhere close in their neighborhood, maybe there are schools with undercapacity that we need to look at for a better opportunity for those students. So we're kind of doing those in concert.
Okay, Madam Superintendent, that was the next question.
Okay.
The question I've got now is, what about the schools that have already been built, where the flooding is chronic and persistent, and where literally it appears that we've been putting Band-Aids on some systemic problems that go beyond the boundaries of the school? I'm just saying, I hear what you're saying about the rezoning and the timber zones. That obviously is an even more long-term concern. Mm-hmm. But right now, are we going to get further and further in the hole by not literally taking flooding in our school system as a top priority for the schools that have been built, let's say, for the last 10 or 15 years? Or in the case of Palmetto High, since...
That's been there for a long time.
Long time. So I'm just asking, how can we incorporate that as a condition of concern that is urgent across the district? Now, or has that been included in the, I don't think it has, because this started with Mr. Kennedy's question about the $620,000 for the Palmetto High campus drainage, and it doesn't include the consideration that you've already raised, that there's an engineering firm that's going to go out. So what can we expect if we spend $620,000 to improve the drainage on the campus and the infrastructure around the campus that's under the auspices of the city or the county doesn't change, and probably hasn't changed even since before these conditions were. I mean, I went out to the school and looked at the topography there. We may have done a lot of stuff here on this campus, but there hadn't been much change around it.
Right, we would have to work with the city, we'd have to reach out to them. It becomes a budgetary item on their side or a decision that we have to express concern with.
Now, maybe this might not be the right place to bring this up, but I just think that this is a very right topic for discussion before the Council of Governments in terms of trying to deal with, we don't exist in a vacuum, and no matter what we do to improve it, if you're not going to improve the situation around us, then what? And so I don't know how to get on their agenda or what we do, but I think this is a serious enough problem that it transcends the resources of the district to resolve alone.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Superintendent?
I have reached out to the mayor, and they are partnering with us. Once we get the study back, we certainly can present it to the county as well. If the study shows that whatever the corrective action is beyond what's within our control. But I think we do have to partner if there are situations that are beyond what we can do. Absolutely. If it's our pipe runs into their pipe and who knows? But I think it's important when it's something significant that we do go out and get an engineer so that we can make sure that we're fixing it properly for years to come. And I do believe the mayor here? The mayor is here. I do believe the mayor is committed to also working with us in finding a permanent solution for Palmetto. She wants it fixed. So I think if there's any thing in it that we need to partner together, I feel comfortable that not only the city of Palmetto, but I also believe the county government will. The county had a sales tax too, so I do think if we brought it to their attention by an engineer firm, they would be willing to put monies toward to help us solve it, if it is anything that's beyond what really is on our property. But I do think that when we're looking at all of our older schools, we are identifying them from top to bottom of what can we do to correct all problems and budget for a comprehensive solution. Now, it all might not be done in one day, but we are identifying them so that we can make sure that we're putting them on our construction list and identifying those for long-range plans.
And Mr. Chair?
Board Member Golden.
Yes, I guess the real question is, what can we do as a board to facilitate this dialogue, not only not like we're doing very well in these four walls, but making sure that the community knows and that other people know that a lot of this that has come up over the last 20 or 30 years is really problematic from issues that existed 40 and 50 years ago. And so I just want us to start including that in our analysis in terms of what our capital plan is, that we're going to spend $620,000 if that will solve the whole problem, if there are no other ancillary issues from surrounding government entities. That's when we talk about a capital plan, I don't think we can continue to operate just within our considerations and our construction needs. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Board Member Kennedy.
I just want to address this real quick. Two things here. I think Reverend Golden just made a lot of really good points, but I think one thing that we have talked about consistently on the board is the issues of climate change and how we as a district need to adjust. And I think this fits in there because as the climate changes and our weather begins to change, we are going to see larger and longer rain events. So events like we saw a couple Fridays ago at Palmetto are going to become a more I think that was a special situation. Palmetto's had the problem for a long time, but that was an especially bad morning. So I think this is something that we, just not in the short term, but in the long term, I'm looking at you, Mr. Chapman, that we need to, and we've talked about it, is think about that long-term strategic plan for climate resilience. The other, as long as we're on the topic specifically of Palmetto, I want to tie something into them as well. And when we do approve our capital budget, I think we can get a lot of bang for our buck in that capital budget in terms of just general campus beautification. Because I think the easy, I guess low-hanging fruit is what I would call it, is the drainage issue. And we've talked about this before, drainage and just kind of general beautification of the campus. Because we all get around to schools and we walk around and we notice things like, oh, that could look a little better. And it's not that anybody is not doing their job, but sometimes it's a deluge of rain washes a bunch, or just kids, high traffic areas that grass can't handle. So I know the Palmetto group had used the example of the Manatee High courtyard, which got AstroTurf, and the times that I'm there, it seems to be holding up. It looks good, relatively speaking. I think it was probably somewhat inexpensive. So if we as a board and as a district could explore kind of lower cost solutions like that, could go a long way toward the kind of the satisfaction that teachers and students feel with their campus. So.
Thank you, Board Member Kennedy. I have a question, this is going back, about do we have, what is the allocation regarding the tracks, the high school tracks? We have 600,000, and I've seen, are they, each high school is getting a certain amount, or what is the direction of using that 600,000?
Have detail for you. I believe they span a couple.
Mr. Meyer.
Nope, they are.
Okay, superintendent,
While you're looking.
yeah.
We began this a few years ago due to injuries with those events. We began, and the expectation was to add a couple each year. Part of it will depend on the surface quality of the asphalt, because before you can put the rubberized track over, that asphalt has to be in good condition. We've done Palmetto High, Manatee, Lakewood Ranch. The expectation is for all schools to have that same level. And how they decided the order was they based it on the worst track surface to start with. So I believe this year is Braden River High School, and we have Bayshore High, of course, in Southeast. They have to strategically do it when it's not during track season, not during football season, and not during rainy season. So the company, has to come in and place a time frame where it's not impeding on those. But it will reduce a number of injuries. It will support and hold up much longer. And it was something that each of them were expecting to do over time to get them all at a certain level.
Good,
It
thank
was
you.
1.2 million for all of them. So as Ms. Saunders stated, we've completed 3, so it's 200 apiece.
Okay, thank you. I ran on and fell down on cinder tracks, and that was real old school.
This would be better. It's rubber.
Okay,
Bounce back.
yeah, well, I think I still have some cinders in my back. I had a question with respect, going back into the Witt Elementary. What was the original contract, concerning the renovation? Is this the addition, the roof addition is by itself?
We
Nine.
have a whole, I can either skip forward or we can address that now. We have a whole slide talking about WIT and what we plan, what this
Okay.
covers. Would you
Well-
like to?
Well, why don't we do it in the order? I thought that's,
We'll make sure.
I think my fellow board members preferred, kind of doing it as we went along, and I said, fine. But, okay, why don't we go as you originally proceeded with it? Thank
I
you.
have learned today, we presented the summary first. I think that maybe we should have presented all the detail to address the board's questions, and then we could have summarized at the end, so,
Okay.
thank you, I've learned that.
We'll get to wit in a little bit. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, we'll make sure. We have other projects, safety for the Division of Construction Services. We typically have flooring that needs replaced as we go through the year, parking, electrical, painting, closed caption TV and cameras, security cameras, annual repairs and maintenance, site acquisition, technology projects, which is part of our computer refresh projects, equipment and buses, and then you'll see equipment, music, band uniforms, school FF&E, admin FF&E, buses, and vehicles. The portions of equipment listed are part of the items that go into our capital transfer that we discuss so frequently. We will make those purchases from general funds. For example, our band uniforms, it is budgeted to a different high school each year. They have 2 years to spend those funds. They will purchase the uniforms, and then that amount is transferred from capital later. We have more pieces of the transfer listed here. We have special school maintenance, facility project management, general school maintenance, charter school capital outlay, PICO, or local capital improvement, charter school capital outlay 1.5 mil sales tax for 3.5, and then property insurance. And then for debt service, we have sales tax revenue bond and our lease purchase bonds, qualified school construction bonds, and qualified zone academy bond. At our last workshop, Dr. Hopes asked if we had anything that could be refinanced at this time. We reached out to our financial advisors, and our 2015 COPS have the closest call date, but that's not until July 1st of 2023. Plus, we have a 2.92% interest rate, so it's pretty low. But they will keep an eye on those things for us.
Yes, Board Member Kennedy.
Thank you. I want to get one more plug in real quick to my fellow board members. If you notice here on the first slide, Heather was referring to page 8, you'll see buses 3.2 million. But board members, we need to shift off of fossil fuels. So I am asking for your commitment to turning our bus and vehicle fleet electric or non-fossil fuel burning. So just keep that in your back pocket for now when we get to final approval. So,
No, let's go on and get it on.
well, we got a lot to get through. So
Okay.
I just want to keep
We'll have a report from them soon as to the
working on that. too.
advantages and cost of making that transition, I'm sure. Right, Superintendent? Okay, thank
Little
you.
by little. Yeah, an electric bus is about, roughly it's going to be about 150 to 175% the cost of a diesel burning bus. But over the life of the bus, and you factor in the fuel savings, you're looking at about the same cost. So, if not some savings, but I'll have a mathematician break that down because
That'll be forthcoming,
that will be forthcoming.
yes.
Don't be scared off by the cost, the upfront cost.
Just what are you supposed to do with that long electrical cord that you
Yeah.
plug in? How does that work? I mean, so-
Well, I'm sure the engineers have a very nice plug-and-play system where,
He's gonna invest in FPL stock.
FPL.
Their parent company, next
Well,
year.
I think Superintendent has come up with the best plan. It's called manual pushing of the bus.
Of the bus.
And it's combining phys ed budget with.
Reduce busing, period.
Okay.
save some money too.
Okay, please proceed.
Our next slide shows our project breakdown. As you can see, our high school, middle school, and elementary projects are pretty well proportioned with maintenance and repair following. And then our support facility projects is a small portion, technology and equipment and buses as well. So this really shows that most of our capital, the bulk of our capital dollars are going into our schools and then paying debt service, or we're holding in reserve for future projects. So now we're to the comprehensive facility assessment. It has 4 parts. First, we collect the data, which we have done. That was completed May 1st. Then we download and validate the data. That's in process right now. It will be complete by October 1st. We communicate the data, so we need to communicate what it says to the board and the community. and then we develop the 2021 capital plan. The comprehensive facility assessment is only part of the district's capital plan. It's an inventory of our facilities and their components. It does not include new schools, additions, enhancements, shelter hardening, bringing the facility up to current codes, new and evolving technology, for example, phones, new instructional technology or computer equipment, furniture. It's basically just our facility. We don't take into consideration redistricting, revenue changes, and other complex components. So basically, it just takes a hard look at our facilities and what condition they're in currently, and allows us to sort that in many different ways. We are in the process of developing a long-range planning committee. It will be formed. It will include the superintendent, the deputy superintendents, the executive director of education, myself, the director of maintenance, the director of construction services, the executive planner, the strategic planner, and Office of Student Demographics and Assignments. And what this committee will do is we will get together as we move forward with this planning process to vet information, communicate it to the board, and help look at all the different pieces that will affect how we move forward with our capital budget. In the interim, because we haven't been able to fully dive in and use this plan, we selected 4 facilities in the poor category, and we're moving forward with those schools. That is WIT, which is already in process, Terra, SUG, and Braden River Middle. For Gene Witt Elementary, the board approved our contracts on 4/10/18 and a partial on 3/12/19. Work started in March of 2019, and it includes site work and procurement of long lead times, chiller, etc. I will tell you that WIT is my hurricane shelter, so I've experienced the chiller personally. The team met with the superintendent on May 30th of 2019. Due to budget, the scope was reduced. The team is currently finishing summer work and revisiting the plans to reflect these changes. One of the questions I believe you asked, Mr. Minor, is it was board approved on 9/25/18, not 19. The original budget was $17 million, and then on September 25th of 2018, the revised budget is $20,400,000. And the project-specific costs are modifications to the administrative area, expansion of playfields, site work and floor plan compliance, an 8-acre parcel, incorporation of new district standards for VoIP, voice over internet phones, PA and fire alarm instructional technology. We're going to add queuing to eliminate traffic stacking on Rye Road, which is an issue, and structural deficiencies with existing slope metal roof. Now, were there other questions you had related to WIT, sir?
I guess my memory's really failing me because it says on page 13, board approved on 9/25/19.
It's 9/25/18, sir.
And it seems like we have Project Crawl here regarding, WIT and increasing costs. And I'm wondering why, weren't some of these projected improvements previously, listed?
What happened on 9/25, what happened on September 25th of last year, that's the day the 5-year capital plan was approved and what was included in that. There were some existing details, and Jane could walk us through what's happened since then with all the different changes to WIT scope.
We're also putting an addition at WIT. It was originally 10 classrooms, 8 class. We're putting an 8 classroom wing addition there as well. We finished the site work and dealt with a 100-year floodplain on the additional property that we own to the north. And it's getting a HVAC renovation like the other sister schools to it.
Okay. Seems like I read someplace here about addition roof, addition/roof. How much of this $9.6 million is for roof. I'm looking at page 6 of our
Yeah,
Manatee.
that's just 1 year of a multiple-year project.
Yes, that's
That's all the expense
the
for
work,
1 year.
the work that we're going to address this current fiscal year. WIT is one of the ones that spans multiple years.
So if you look on page 13, the total project budget is gonna be around 20 million. Yeah. So what you're looking at on page 6, that's the whole project, with elementary renovation, addition, and roof, but that's just 1 year of a multi-year project.
Fiscal year 1920.
Okay, so, the budget that we approved on 9/25/18 for 20.4 million included all the roof expenses.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, we're not, saying, okay, we're gonna add some more money on for a roof.
No, we did find a structural deficiency with the roof when we took off the panels, which we didn't do until design development.
Okay, and this discovery was back in September of
It was
18.
after that.
Okay, we found a structural deficiency concerning the roof,
Yes.
and we haven't added, to the proposed budget, for that
We
deficiency.
haven't added anything to the proposed budget because we're looking to reduce the total project budget. So we know we have to do the roof repair.
Okay. Can this board be looking forward to an additionally capital expense for this deficiency? Okay, the answer is no, I guess. Superintendent?
Mr. Minor, this is a prototype very similar to Bashaw.
Right.
It came in around 15 million, something like that. So the original budget was 17, and it was increased, the board approved it at 20 million for. We know we're doing an addition, they had to do queuing. The architect has not given us the complete comprehensive scope of it, but that roof is included in the 20,400,000. I do agree with Reverend Golden. I think part of what's a little confusing, and it's because you guys live and breathe it, I think it would be helpful when we have total price of a plan, and then when you see a part that if it's done over 3 years, if you say we're spending 9 million this year, we have the total price, so we know the remainder is spread over 2 additional years. You guys are aware of that, but I think from the community or from the board's perspective, it's hard for them to go back in peace. Oh yeah, we did 20 million or 5 million of that 20 million project last year. They're not sure if you're adding 9 onto the 20, 5 onto the 20, but that was the complete total price. Now, does that mean the board can change the price? The board always can change the price. But that is what you approve for the comprehensive renovation of that school. But I do think I would like some clarification presented. Same thing what you have here, but on these that are spanned over years, if you'll go back and add those pieces, I just think it just will help everybody to understand. And if $1 million is for the bleachers, and it's done in 1 year and that's the total price, then they know that's the total price. Or if $1 million is the total price, but you're spending half of it this year and some of it next year, that's great too. I think we just need to add a little bit more details just so everybody can follow suit.
We want the fiscal year total and then the total project budget across
Yes.
the years.
I just think it helps everybody to understand and not misunderstand, are we adding on to this or so forth. So just for our clarification. You guys have it, we don't have it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Board Member Hopes.
I think what else will help now that we have our engineering study is because I see, for example, when all this is completed and the classrooms are added, how many student stations are we going to have at WIT?
I don't
It'll
have
be
that
around
number with me.
846.
Okay.
Yeah, we're adding like roughly 120, 118.
8 times, yeah, 22, about
Depending on which
180,
grade level
180,
the
it depends on,
addition will be.
about 180. So it will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 846, 850
And
is,
so how many student stations are in Barbara Harvey?
Around.
838.
Around the same, and without the added expenses that we approved to make it a designated shelter, what, we were looking at, what, 20 million? Originally
I'm
for
so
Barbara
glad-
Harvey?
I am so
20,
glad you
22
asked
million?
that question, because we get asked that all the time. It's sort of comparing apples to oranges, because at WIT, we have a lot of site work that we had to deal with. So we had a 7-acre piece of property and 6 and change in the back that we purchased. We had to clear it, we had to add a bunch of fill to it, and we had to make it compliant with the 100-year floodplain. That was an expense that obviously we didn't have on Barbara Harvey. On Barbara Harvey, the site we had 6 years prior put $1 million worth of dirt on it. So I don't know what that would equate to today's dollars.
Here's the suggestion, is in all of these projects where we're really looking at significant expenditures, is to give us a side-by-side. So this is what the proposed renovation plan is. These are the costs, and this is the projected 10-year maintenance cost projection. And then next to it, what's the replacement cost, and what's the 10-year projected, maintenance for the new building? So that, or 5-year or something, so that we're looking at being able to make a decision about whether or not to just replace the entire facility, so that we have new technology, more energy efficient, less future maintenance, all those sorts of
I
things.
would love to replace WIT, but it's only 25 years old. DOE would never allow us to do something that young.
Well, unless it was more cost-effective to replace it. I mean, I have no problem saying whoever did this 25 years ago didn't do what we needed. We still need to make those kind of decisions, because I'm looking at this revised budget, which we approved, but now having experienced, building a few new schools, I personally, if we were looking at, a 10% cost difference, I'd probably build a new school.
I completely agree with you. The other thing to consider is that WIT was pre-class size amendment. So WIT's square footage is a lot more for fewer students. So it's a much larger school, because now we build classrooms 650 to 850 square feet. These are probably all 1,000. So that means there's 20% extra square footage in every classroom.
Which we're.
And we're renovating that, and we're renovating
and we're
those
gonna
square
cool
footage.
it, and we're
so-
gonna heat it, and we're gonna maintain it, and so,
Yeah,
it's
it's a great discussion.
I think it's a discussion we need to have. We need to take in all this data that we got from the engineering study and incorporate that into our strategic plan and take a serious look at how we make these decisions.
Appreciate that.
Okay, Vice Chair Messenger.
Didn't it say in that facility assessment study that the total replacement cost was 25 million?
No, the total budget we had was 25 million.
In the facility assessment study that we had done, didn't it say, it had in one of the line items, it had total replacement costs? Didn't it say on there that the total replacement cost was 25 million?
I think that is correct, but I think that obviously doesn't include the addition, so the
Sure,
addition's worth
I get that.
4
That's
million.
a lot.
So yeah, I would say that the replacement value of that is 25 to 29 million.
Okay.
Okay, well, Vice Chair Messenger is warming up the bulldozer to start a new school.
I'm really not. I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
necessarily doing that at all. That was one of the questions that he brought up, and I wanted to
Yeah.
point out that that's what the study said.
No, that's great, thank you. Pardon me,
I don't want to keep
okay.
harping
Board
on
Member.
this, but I would hope that we would not go over into the business of second guessing. I'm hoping that I heard the construction services person explain very clearly and very definitively all of the things that were considered in terms of bringing this recommendation to us. I don't want to do it twice. And I'm hoping that the expertise that we pay for in terms of our staff and in terms of the people who do this work will not come to us unopinionated about whether we ought to do this or do that. Not that we're going to do it, because we tend to make up our own minds, but I don't want you to come here saying, we don't know what to do, you all decide, or we don't have an opinion, you decide. And I'm just saying that because there's going to be a lot more capital decisions that have to be made in the next few years that are going to impact the school district for the next 25 or 30. And so we really need good people that we can, I'll use the word trust, to give us that best thinking, that best analysis, the best solutions. We still have the right to decide, but I would like that brought to me instead of me trying to query you as to what's the best solution to a particular problem. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
The next project we are addressing is Terra Elementary. The proposed tentative scope includes modifications to the admin area, expansion of playfields, site work and drainage, incorporation of new district standards for voice over internet phones, PA and fire alarm, instructional technology, add queuing to eliminate traffic again, address structural deficiencies with existing slope metal roof, replace airside HVAC components including chillers, ductwork, VAVs, replace ceilings, lighting and alarm systems, enhance security, enlarge the cafeteria space, replace casework, flooring and doors, hardware is required, paint the campus, design and engineering fees, furniture, fixtures and equipment, and technology for a proposed budget of $20,400,000.
Yeah, Vice Chair Messenger.
I have one question. Will Tara be getting an additional wing or another building? I don't see it on here, that's why I'm asking.
Believe so at this time.
So then my question is, why is the budget the same as WIT? Because WIT is getting an additional building. And WIT, we know, has additional roof problems, and Terra might, because I know they're probably similar in vintage. But why are the budgets the same if the other school is getting a wing and this one's not?
There are some pieces of work, for example, expansion of the play fields. We are enlarging the cafeteria space.
Those are both happening at WIT.
Were they? And Jane could again probably speak to the construction aspects.
Superintendent's got her hand up.
Okay.
Oh, Ms. Sonder.
Madam Superintendent.
Right now, these are not final budgets. We picked the 3 schools and were given a tentative expectation. They do have to go out and do a scope. There could be a 4-wing addition. It's not listed. They do have 4 portables there. We are hoping that when we go and do renovations, if there are portables, we do account for those and we remove them so that they're no longer. Some of our schools are very tight with space, so we're not sure if that can be done. But a 4-pack is what it's called, 4 classrooms, is much less expensive than the other. It may not come in at $20 million for. We put that as a placeholder for our capital because that's what we've known as the price that's been approved for WIT. When they go in and they do their analysis with the architect and so forth, it may not be that much, but it won't exceed that amount. So we right now, for the purpose of this, as we do with our construction projects, we give a tentative, that's our maximum price. They will go in and price everything out, and then it could end up being less than that. But we put the same as what we're working on right now because it's the same prototype. It's the same type of building.
Okay, Board Member Golden.
Yes. I'd like to quote Mr. Kennedy, I'd like a follow-up to what Mrs. Messenger has just brought out, which is a very valid point. We've got 2 schools, one of which is going to have an addition, one of which will not, both of which,
Good, but it's 4 classrooms instead of 8.
okay, but they're both budgeted at the same amount. Is there a school that is in as bad a condition as these 4 are that could use an addition to it that would help alleviate actual overcrowding, alleviate actually another elementary school, since elementary for elementary? Is there a school that might be able to benefit from that which is not spent at Tara to help deal with the real problem of overcrowding?
Superintendent?
If that's my question right now, we're in the process of putting a wing on at Willis. So if you're talking about elementary, we do not have an immediate need to have a wing placed at this time. Some of them that do have portables, we would like to go back and possibly remove portables with some brick and mortar, and those things will be coming forward. But if you're asking about overcrowded situations, we've now eliminated, because of the new elementary school and some wings, our elementaries are not at overcapacity status. And we're about to do some rezoning to also help with some of those situations.
Okay, please proceed.
SUG.
Rezoning.
SUG is one of those schools that we took a look at. As you can see, all the items that are crossed out were the proposed tentative scope. So SUG has now it has been determined that a complete replacement should occur. There's enough property that we anticipate we'll be able to build the new school and then tear down afterwards so that it can remain in operation. And the proposed tentative budget for that is $45 million.
Mr. Minor, could Jane come up and explain why we're proposing that for this one and not for WIT, and why that's a possibility?
Yes.
So the replacement value of that school was around 45 million. It was 44 and change, I think. And when we got to doing all of the things on this list, we got to about 37.5 million, and at that point we said that school is 46 years old. DOE will allow us to, if we prove to them through a custodial analysis, and the school is 50 years old, that the school is a replacement candidate. This one actually fell into that category. If we started the process now and hired the AE and CM and built the new school behind it in its current location, by the time we tore it down, it would be very near to that 50-year mark. And it just didn't make sense to put a bunch of money in and the life cycle of those things be 20 years when we could build a whole new school with a lot of it being a 50-year. We try to build them to a 50-year standard. Obviously, technology changes and you have to change chillers and such, but the building itself, our goal is a 50-year building.
Any questions? Thank you.
Braden River Middle School, we have enhanced the facade and windows, reconfigure administration and media like we did at Johnson K through 8, very similar. Site work and drainage, rework the playfields, incorporation of the new district standards, again for phones, PA, fire alarm, and instructional technology. Add queuing to eliminate traffic stacking on the roadway. Re-roof, including a mansard and stucco repair. Replace airside HVAC components, including chillers, ductwork, and VAVs. Replace ceilings, lighting, and alarm systems. Enhance security. Enlarge cafeteria space. Replace casework, flooring, and doors. Paint the campus interior, both interior and exterior, and this includes design and engineering fees, FF&E, and technology, for $23 million as the proposed budget.
Any questions?
Future projects, these are not funded. Right now, we don't have,
Okay, Board Member Golden.
I recall when I first came on the board, some of the capital estimates and analyses were based on figures that were construction figures from 6, 8, 10 years ago. I know that's, so is it safe to say that these estimates are based on the most current
Yes,
construction costs
yes.
that are available? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Golden. Please proceed.
So, not funded and no project work has been started yet, but the next two upcoming projects are Lakewood Ranch High School, the proposed scope of a classroom wing addition, and the School Support Center, a proposed scope of HVAC renovation. That is this building. It would be over the course of, we anticipate, 5 years, and we would do a floor at a time with that one. Any questions on either of?
Okay, Board Member Close.
You know, with regards to the future planning for Lakewood Ranch, I know we're going to be doing some redistricting, but when you do the feasibility analysis for that, I would like to see what the alternative cost is to build the third student building at Parrish. The pad is already there, the building is already blueprinted, so we would have a cost. So I'd like to see a cost comparison of adding, I think it's like 1,000 student stations. How many?
500. We were gonna take that school from 2,000 to 2,500.
Right, but what I'm saying is to build that third student building at Parrish adds, I think, another 1,000 or 800 student stations. Each one of those buildings,
You said 500, didn't you?
each one is built, well, we only have two student buildings there now.
They're not all the same. That new.
Oh, you mean the additional building?
The additional building is narrower.
Okay.
It's, you know how they have like two hallways?
Right. Okay, so that one pad's a smaller building, for a smaller building, if it remained 2 stories. So it's 500?
Can I make sure I understand? Are you asking when it comes to evaluating Lakewood Ranch, we look at that similar structure to put at Lakewood Ranch?
No, I'm saying, you know, given the fact of the current school zoning, okay, when we look at the cost to expand Lakewood Ranch to accommodate either the students that are already there, they're in portables.
Right.
When we do that, to look at what the cost would be to build the third student building at the Parish Community High School and zone those students to Parish rather than Lakewood Ranch, because a lot of those students are right there in that middle corridor and can kind of go either way from a distance perspective. And so to just look at, to arrive at those student stations, what is the most cost-effective way, both from a transportation cost perspective as well as a construction perspective?
Okay, Board Member Kennedy.
Real quick, and I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to kind of address this too in a slightly different way, but I think that's a good ask, but my just kind of global look at the county is that we're going to need both. We need that third building at Parish, and we need relief at Lakewood Ranch, because if you look at Lakewood Ranch this year at the 10-day count, granted, I think we all had to do the rezoning of Parish to do it. We'd probably do it a little bit differently, but we thought we were providing a lot more relief than we did. And my point is just it's an easy one. People just keep coming. And so between that third building at Parish, between a new building at Lakewood Ranch so we can get rid of the portals, and then in 6 or 7 years, the new high school potentially on Lorraine Road, that was probably going to be filled by the time we open it as well. So I think those are all good questions and information that we should be thinking about long term. But I don't be dramatic, but I mean, you look at the numbers for Lakewood Ranch High, and it's like, man, we thought we were giving them some elbow room, and they have less elbow room now. So anyway, that's it. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Madam Superintendent.
I agree. You know, with Mr. Kennedy, Lakewood Ranch was only built brick and mortar for 1,700. So I don't think that we can say, really, I think if you're talking about 500 stations, that probably makes sense. to do that there, and reducing those portables. We really are trying to make our goal in the next handful of years, addressing where we're going, addressing those portables. So for safety and security reasons, they can be enclosed for brick and mortar. So if you think about 500 student stations, it's still 2,200 students. We know it's beyond that, but we do think that we can shift those numbers. Those numbers will change some, but that will help it be a little bit safer. So I do think you still need that wing at Lakewood Ranch. Doesn't mean we don't need to price it out and see what it's gonna cost at the other school as well. But we certainly know it's cheaper to build a wing
Yeah.
than it is to build a whole new school. There is a tipping point. You really don't want an elementary school bigger than 850 if you can help it, and middle school 1,200, high school somewhere around 23, 24, 2,000 is ideal. But a wing definitely is cost effective and all the way around. So I think we certainly can take that into consideration when they're pricing it out for the next 5-year capital prices.
Board Member Hopes.
But there are other districts in the state, larger districts, that
You're-
build their high schools to accommodate a much larger
You're-
student population.
correct.
So, you
You're
know, and I think Lakewood Ranch High School, like Parrish, there's plenty of real estate on those campuses to expand, if I'm not
Get the
mistaken.
portables removed, you're right.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. I say, you know, because I think you're right. It's less expensive to expand those campuses than it is to build a whole new high school campus.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Board Member Golden.
Mr. Chair, the first thing, going back to this comprehensive facility assessment, long-range planning committee, I believe I had said in another setting at a previous time that we do want to try to involve the people who are responsible for this growth and this population in this process. And I don't know how that sets up or how that pans out. But if we're talking about long-term growth and long-term plans, 5 years, in my opinion, is not long enough to plan for. And to that end, with respect to the new wing at Lakewood Ranch and the completion of the pad that already exists there at there in Parish, I'm hoping that we consider the dynamics of what this county is going to look like, not 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but 20 years from now. Because it's only 20 years from now that the children who haven't yet moved here and who haven't been born here yet will be in high school. And so if we start planning again another cycle of schools for the next 5 years, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, our county is going to be no further ahead in what it offers for facilities. So I would hope that we wouldn't get into an either or a comparison. The bottom line is that most of the growth that's going to come in this county is going to go out 64 and going to go out 70. And that's where Lakewood Ranch is, unless we start planning on building another school out in that particular area. And I don't hear any sentiment for that or any desire for that, but we can build big enough to accommodate the growth that we know is going to come out that way. So I don't want to get into let's build enough to accommodate what we see. Let's build far enough ahead to accommodate what we can't see, but what we've already seen come to bear. And I'm not so sure that the school boards that sat here in the 70s contemplated, or the 80s contemplated what would happen out in Parish. They just didn't. And I don't want us to make the same analytical mistake in terms of how we plan for the future. So if that having been said, I'm certainly hopeful that, having talked with that principal out there, they really need the addition, but not just an addition to accommodate the existing overcrowding in the portables, but they need an addition big enough to allow for the planning that we're going to do. I hope also in terms of changing attendance zones to accommodate the future.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so This slide just shows our tentative 5-year capital plan by fund. Shows what we anticipate to spend 1920 throughout. Of course, this will change once we develop our long-range planning committee and move forward. We have our appropriations on the next slide, which show cumulative amounts for construction projects, or rolled up amounts, construction project, summarized maintenance, technology, etc. And it shows what we anticipate our reserve to be each year. 2021 is a little tight. We like to keep at least a $10 million fund balance in capital outlay for emergencies. So then 2021 it's a little bit better there, and then we have a decent balance again in 2022-23. Our tentative 5-year plan side by side shows you revenues and governmental accounting. Revenues have to equal expenditures, so this just shows you how that looks. Another view. We like to give you many views, so here is a pie chart. It shows our millage is one of the biggest pieces. Again, our beginning fund balance and that we've carried forward from the prior year, and sales tax are our largest funding sources. Our available reserve will be at about 33% as an average across the 5-year plan. School and facility projects are 23% of our expenditures. Maintenance and repairs are the next largest category at 11%. The final part of the presentation is on our debt service fund. It shows estimated revenues and expenditures from capital projects, what our dues and fees, the percentage is so small you can't see it. Redemption of principal at 49%, interest at 28% is what we're paying out in total across the board for $40.5 million. Debt service fund, we show you our revenue and expenditure sources. Beginning fund balance of 9.1. The incoming transfer from capital projects to pay debt is 29.7. So our total, with a few other miscellaneous items, our total budgeted revenue is 40.5. It shows you what portion of that is redemption of principal, interest, dues and fees, and then fund balance held for future principal payments. Slide 26 is a picture of all our outstanding debt as of June 30th, 2019. It shows you the original amount issued, our commencement date, the maturity date, outstanding principal, interest rates, and outstanding interest. Our total outstanding debt as of 6/30/19 is $333,110,454. Principal is $273.8 million, and outstanding interest is $80.9. We're actually in a really pretty good position with our debt. We still have a significant amount of borrowing capacity if we had needed to do that, and that goes back to our fund balance and, again, our credit bureau ratings that have increased over the years. So we are strengthening our financial position.
Okay, I'm sorry. Board Member Golden.
With respect to strengthening our financial position, is that because we are reducing the amount of debt that we have?
It's several things. It's the fact that we're paying off our debt. We are increasing our general fund balance.
Okay.
And our ratings have increased as a result of both of those and several other things.
Okay. Given the trajectory that we are on, will there be a need to propose a capital millage, whatever?
We already have it.
When does it come renewed?
Our sales tax is 15 years.
2033, I think.
Mm-hmm. And we have
33?
This was renewed in 2016 for 15 years, I believe.
Okay.
31, 20.
Okay, so that's not a problem that we're gonna have to deal with the public about.
For a while. We receive a 1.5 mil sales, or 1.5 mil capital outlay millage
Okay.
as well.
In addition.
What is our bond rating now?
We have three. We're in high Bs, low As for all of those. I have a summary sheet. We've presented to the board. I can send it out to you. There are 3 different rating agencies, and we have a different rating with each one. But we were upgraded 2 steps with one last year with Moody's, I believe. We have Moody's and Fitch. We can send you that detail.
But is it fair to say that the present philosophy that we have employed here in the county in terms of the way we handle debt and the way we handle our capital needs, we are on a trajectory for that to continue to improve?
Yes,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, Board Member Hopes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heather, I mean, with regards to these bonds and you know, really specifically the sales tax bond at 5%, is there nothing we can do about that?
Not at the current time. With
Well, I mean, there's always something we can do, depends on what the cost is.
we can, but I don't know that it would be beneficial. We can look into that.
If we could look into it, because we have some here, and I mean, just take, we have, and I remember doing the refunding on these, because I think we did that way back, right when I became chair. But if we can look at what our options are to both, you know, reduce our total debt and then reduce our debt service. And I realize, depending on how these things were written, the cost to refund them is not feasible. But if we can take a look at just what all of our options are.
Right. The Director of Finance and I actually have a meeting, I believe it's next week, with one of our advisors, and then the following week we have a training and another meeting, so we
Okay.
will get those answers. We'll have them addressed at those.
Okay, thank you. The money is pretty inexpensive right now.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Slide 27 is just the schedule of our debt service payments. It breaks it down so that you can see principal and interest in total by year. 28 is a bar graph to show you principal as it relates to interest, and you can see that we're paying down our interest. 2029 is where it really starts to drop off. Does the board have any more questions?
Thank you very much. Okay, I guess Board Member Hopes has a question.
So, and this is actually a very impressive position to be in. So really, we're looking at like a 12 to 13 year horizon if we don't borrow anymore. Pretty much on this schedule, we're narrowing it down, like 12 years, 50% of the principal is gone.
Correct.
Okay. And then the remainder of the carrying cost is nominal because we've already paid everything.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. The next on the agenda is student progression plan. Do we want to take a 5-minute break? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll resume at, I guess, 3:50. And,
The legislative platform is next.
what do I, legislative platform, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, and we need to take a 10.
Okay, we have a meeting coming up with our legislative delegation on October 2nd, I believe, at 9 a.m., I think at the County Commission chambers. And we are privileged to have with us today our lobbyists to bring us up to date on what is going on there, what's proposed, and suggestions for our advocacy at the get-together on October 2nd. So I guess, why don't you all come up at the same time? Does that work for you? And we thank you for being here and helping us out. So,
just about the delegation meeting, you do have it October 2nd. A couple of dates that are coming up I wrote down. If you're interested in participating, Florida School Board Association on August 30th will have a go-to meeting that you can participate in what you would like to see on part of their agenda. If it's not on there that you're familiar with or that you're interested in, or something extra to add to it, I should say. The final approval is September 12th. So August 30th, we can get you that information for the meeting, and then September 12th it will be, and I think on the 13th and 14th, it'll be shortly. You have the superintendent's meeting, I believe, shortly after that. So I just want to give you that timeline real quick. I'll make sure that you get the information if you'd like to participate on the phone call. We'll be on the phone call participating on your behalf with part of this discussion, but I wanted to let you know that up front.
okay, thank you. If you could all identify your name, Sean. And
Yes, sir.
We've never met or anything.
Yes, sir, never. Sean Foster, Sunrise Consulting Group.
I'm Corinne Mixon with Rutledge Assinia.
Jessica Janasiewicz with Rutledge Assinia.
Kevin Chapman with the district, sir.
Nice to have you all here. Okay. So,
This is, of course, completely up to you all, but in the past, and looking at what you all did last year, I think you looked at what FSBA did, which is usually a pretty extensive platform, and yours was more narrow in scope with some specific items that you were particularly interested in looking at from the district. So that's an approach, and then you can, of course, also with your membership with FSBA and then the Superintendent's Association, you can have advocacy on some of the larger issues as well, if that's an approach we want to take.
While you have it, there's some issues that you didn't have on here. I just want to give you, as we've been meeting with folks from around the state, there's a couple of issues that you may want to consider. And I thought about it as I was walking up to the door and I saw some of the guardians that were out there. Some of the issues that are not in the FSBA, but I've heard other school boards talking about their training and their retraining. And I know there's some discussions with the attorneys with other schools about what the actual amount should be. Some others have seen it differently than your attorney, and I think that is one of the legislative items to give some clarification that will come out, and I think that could be beneficial to all. Number two, dual enrollment will absolutely be an issue. I would expect the Commissioner of Education to have an aggressive stance this year when it comes to his agenda, and one of the items will be expanding your dual enrollment from 3.0 to 2.5. Also listing in some funding, possibly what they would call scholarships. I think they had it last time under the budget that just came out for even those in private school. So I wanted to kind of make you aware of that. Charter school boards. Kevin and I talked about it just a little bit, but I've also been hearing some whispers around the state. Folks are very concerned about charter schools in their counties without a local representative board. I'm not talking about the mom and dad, the smaller ones. I'm talking about the larger ones who have board members from Broward, Miami-Dade, Orlando, not from your county. Some proposed legislation would simply say either that they would all, just like any other nonprofit would be, how many nonprofits in Manatee County have people on it, in Broward and others, or at least the majority. Somebody to be accountable to, somebody to answer to. That may be something you may be interested in. And one other item I had just heard, there was some SREF, the state requirements for educational facilities, right? Yeah.
Now, last year with this past legislative session, there was actually a lot of work done with regard to facilities. Now, this only went into effect July 1, so, it's very, very new. But essentially, we have a lot more flexibility school districts do now when it comes to building and renovations, if you choose to avail yourselves of that. Basically, and this is a pretty general statement, but essentially, you can't be mandated to do anything beyond what the charter school's flexibility is, if that makes sense. The only exception to that is any local requirements that you might have with regard to shelters for hurricanes. And
Right.
that's, determined
Exactly.
locally as
Yes,
to
yes.
whether or not you need to build to that standard.
That was HB 7300,
Yes,
right?
yes.
They,
So-
they did say, that I've been understanding, that there are some items in there that they have to go back and tweak because it did not, does that sound familiar?
Yes, yes.
And so you'll see some of that legislation. That could be extremely beneficial, especially all the conversations you were having about building and different items. For long-run impacts, that could have some extreme benefits to the school board. So I know these weren't on yours, and we didn't get a chance, but there's some items that literally have just come up in the past couple of days. Obviously, other school boards are talking about doing the same thing and being prepared for the SBA platform.
I would just add the superintendent and her cabinet came up with some considerations that Michelle can hand out if you all, it's a one-pager. No, it's okay. Michelle will hand out, and that's some considerations that internally the SLT and the cabinet discussed as possible priorities.
Okay, Board Member Golden has
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
a question.
This is completely out of left field.
Is that a good thing?
I think so. And you can correct me anywhere along the way that I'm not saying what is true. In order for me to volunteer at my granddaughter's school, now I must submit to a level 2 background screen. Is that true?
Well, you personally have already had it done. So.
Statutorily, I'm not sure if that's a statutory requirement or if that's a local district requirement. We could find that out. There is a level of background screening, I think, in all 67
Okay,
counties
then
to some
okay.
degree.
Then the point that I'm trying to make is that aside from the fact that I'm getting rich here serving on the school board, I don't have many parents who want to work, who want to help, don't have the resources. Okay, and what I promised one of the principals that I talked with in the last few days is that I would ask how we can incorporate funding, and I'm going to call it for a special level 2, whatever that is, that simply says I can go on my granddaughter's school campus and volunteer and not have to be escorted, not have to be treated differently. Now, I can't go to the next school, and I can't go anywhere else, but I want to be able to do that, and I want to get it paid for.
So are you speaking to just the funding of the level 2 background check, the cost associated with?
And I
having
guess,
a level 2 background check?
and creating a category of background check that allows me to do that and nothing else. You see, because if I get a level 2 background check, I can do a lot of different things that have nothing to do with just going to that school. But right now, if I don't get it, I can't go to that school, I can't do anything else. And so I'm just kind of wondering how difficult it would be this late in the process to come up with something that helps the parents and the grandparents and the people who want to go. Because the thinking that we had is these are like part-time unarmed guardians or part-time uncertified paraprofessionals. The volunteer corps in any school is a very important part of the labor force there. But they can't afford it, many of them, and in many of the schools. So that was.
Why don't we do a little more research on that? I'm not aware of a bill that passed this last year which changed the requirements for level 2 screenings for schools. That's not to say that we didn't catch it, maybe something in a security package that none of us noticed, but let's go back and check and see where that requirement lies. As I recall it, there are like school by school waivers. Essentially you check in and when I volunteered, you sort of check in, and if you're there and accounted for, you're good for the day for volunteering. But again, we'll look into it. As far as changing the requirement level 1, level 2, just up front, it could be challenging because a level 2 screening is essentially a state check, and a federal check. That's what makes it the level 2. I mean, level 1 screenings are not typically required by statute, but you can require them. A level 2 screening is really an agreement between the FDLE and the FBI, and that's the kind of chain of communication there. So let us look into it, and we'll get back in touch with you with more information. We'll make sure the board has access to whatever we find out.
Let me be clear. I am not trying to lessen the requirements with respect to the screening. What I'm mostly concerned with is trying to dip into that pot of money that we have for safety and for security in schools and use that to alleviate the cost of participating. That's why I'm not trying to change the requirements. Don't want you to slip in. I want you to come in, but I don't want you to be turned away because you don't have the money.
Sure.
That's the main thing.
And as we were discussing this, it came into my head, there's a lot of requirements associated with the Jessica Lunsford Act, which was
Yes.
years ago. So I think, certainly to your point, lowering the standard would probably be very difficult. Not something I know you all would want to do anyhow, but we can look into thinking about that, a pot of money or accessing some of that school safety money to help folks who can't afford it to get those level background checks, and so they have the ability to volunteer in the schools.
And, I mean, that is gonna be part of the conversation. I mean, school hardening is still gonna be part of it. There's still some appropriations being considered to give assistance to counties statewide. So Hillsboro's got a system right now, an alert system. Everybody's got different, even some are looking at doing it, but I would look at, and maybe that could be part of that discussion and for some funding.
I just brought, like I said, it's left field. So if you could help me with that, I'd appreciate it, because a lot of people just can't afford that. That's a hindrance and not a help to overcoming some of the needs that we need in schools.
One other topic that has been discussed in the last couple of years is VPK and early childhood related issues. There have been lots of bills, not many have actually passed. There's obviously a large cost associated with VPK as it is now, and then if you look to expand it even more. But I do think there's going to be increased attention in that area. So if that's something you all want to consider, is think about what you're doing here at the district. That might be another area to think about. I think we're moving in that direction.
Chairman?
Okay, Board Member Hope.
Yeah, so along those lines, as you're aware, the V pre-K funding doesn't come to the school district. And given what we know about the effectiveness, at least of our pre-K programs, especially with our children that are going to be entering Title I, kindergarten, it's really time for us to look at funding lines for the state school districts to be able to expand the full day pre-K programs that we offer. Not to say, dipping necessarily into the general early childhood funding for the private V pre-K, but we know, and there's plenty of data out there, that it is extremely effective in helping these children become kindergarten ready and therefore being ready to learn in fourth grade. And so we really need to have that discussion and align the school district's funding. And maybe one way to fund that is to deal with the House with regards to these rollback rates, because guess what? When the economy is good, we're rolling back the rates, but when the economy is bad, we're not increasing the rates to offset for decreased property values. And so, this has gone on long enough, and perhaps if we can put on a case for where that money can be spent to improve kindergarten readiness and things like that, we may be able to find a better audience in the House, because as you know, the Senate, has really not advocated for these rollback rates. But for counties like ours that are growing, you know, it's kind of punitive, and it causes us then to have to go to the taxpayers, and we get around it. I mean, look, there's legislation in place that allows us to get around it. You go to the voters, but they're putting on us really what should be done at the state level, because all districts in the state can benefit by expanding, you know, everything from the school day and the pre-K programs. And so along those lines, you know, to my colleagues, I think this is an important issue. One of our board members actually has a child in our pre-K program today as we speak, I guess. Oh, well, maybe no, she's out, almost out, or she's out now, 4 o'clock? Yeah. So at any rate, so that is important. And then along the lines of the technical colleges, I mean, really, the central theme needs our public technical colleges need to be able to compete on an even playing field with the state's private technical colleges. And you know, I know Sean works with some of the state colleges. You probably do too. I think we're kind of cracking that ice, but it's pretty important. I mean, we have capacity and we have capabilities that are not fully being utilized because of outdated, antiquated voids in statutes.
So on that topic, if I could answer, I spoke to Mr. Wagner briefly during your recess, and we'd like to get some communication going between the Association of Florida Colleges on what some of your needs are and how some of the things could be resolved. So we will be working on that in the next week.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Board Member Golden.
Yeah. Before we get too far down the road, this is again from the left field, with respect to the real issue of pre-K curriculum and pre-K needs. I'm just wondering if there is an appetite around the state to now include pre-K in the definition of public school education. Because I know that pre-K education is very lucrative for private persons, but the needs, as my colleague has pointed out, is always in terms of poor people and not having access to the resources that more middle class and higher class families might have. And so I'm not going to put anybody on the spot here because I know we're not going to vote right now. But at least my voice is raised that we continue to try to include pre-K in the definition of what we consider in Florida to be public education. Right now it's K through 12, and I'm wanting it to be pre-K through 12 or 4 years old. Or however we can come up with a definition that everybody can embrace. Those on the left and those on the right can embrace. But that's where the conversation really needs to be had.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Board Member Hope.
And along those lines, let's please work on the definition of classroom educator to include pre-K teachers that are certified and are working in our public schools for best and brightest, okay? Preschool teachers who are certified and who are teaching in our public schools pre-K are classroom educators. And it's not that difficult to fix, and it would sure help us out a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
If everyone's okay with that.
Yeah.
It was on my list.
Okay. Don't let me be calling the shots. It's all 5 of us up here.
Chair, if I may.
We're not having a lot of loud objections at this point. Board Member Kennedy.
No, I think Reverend
No, excuse me. Let's go Vice Chair Messenger and then Board Member Kennedy. Is that okay?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Probably all on the same page on a lot of this anyways.
We are.
So ditto on what Dr. Hopes just said. I think, you know, pre-K teachers should absolutely be included in Best and Brightest. What kind of conversations or what is being done or what could be done to reduce the high stakes of some of the tests? I hear parents saying, well, you know, the test is one issue, but the stakes that are behind it for the teachers, the parents, the school grades, and I think the concern is that that all gets passed down to the kid. And when you talk about mental health, which is brought up in FSBA's, and it's actually brought up even in the draft from the school district, and you can't say to me that the amount of stakes that have been placed now on testing versus when I went to school, you know, I graduated high school in 2005. Even then, yeah, we had FCAT, and you needed it to graduate, but it was nothing like what it is now for our students. We had Florida Rights, that was 4th grade. We had FCAT, I think, in 4th grade. But even then, that was not to the level I think it is now, where it's really becoming burdensome, I think, on the kids. And when we talk about, once again, I think that was another thing in FSBA is about retaining teachers. We're not retaining teachers. Well, when the pressure is insurmountable, the work is a large amount, and no matter what, you feel like you're being graded by a test that may or may not truly measure the standards, and now the standards, we don't even know what they are anymore. So, what can be done to reduce the stakes of the test? And is there effort and desire to do that by the legislature?
We'll both answer. I mean, that's, you can see this is like thin ice. I mean,
Nobody wants to answer that.
Well, I mean, we'll start off. The reality of it is, I mean, this administration, I mean, especially with this commissioner, I just don't see him lowering the stakes. I actually see them increasing it. And then that's just,
In what way?
on the way that they feel, you know, if a school's failing, I mean, he just said in the newspaper that.
How do they define failing?
Right. I mean, that definition is obviously, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying, on their part, when it coming to the policy, they believe if the school's failing, those teachers need to be removed. And so I'm just being honest, with this commissioner and with this governor, I just see that a high level. We can talk a bit more. On the other part, if you want to say, I have heard discussions when they've talked about the end of course exam, which is, you know, having the 30% impact, about reducing that. You know, that would be, that is a discussion that they've had in the past 12 months, and I would see that to come up. So I'm just trying to be, you know, very, you know, honest and seeing some of the issues that they have pursued and that they are going to this session. I just wouldn't see them reducing. You may want to say a little bit too.
I have another question then, kind of off of what you just said.
Yes, ma'am.
So since we know that there are new standards that are being developed, I would assume perhaps a new test will be developed. How will they measure the validity of that test to make sure that that test is actually testing the standards that they are now creating? So that we know that this assessment that is going to be grading all these people, and you believe in the achievement, that this is you want the you know, they want the, I'm not saying you, but they want to be able to say accountability. But you can't say accountability if the standards are being recreated and a test is presumably going to be recreated, and if it's not, then that's another problem, because then why'd you change the standards?
Right.
And so if you are saying that those things are going to happen, then how are they going to know the validity of that test? Is that in the plan for
Well,
accountability?
I think it, depending on what happens with the standards, so how dramatic of a change we see with the standards, you might see exactly what you said. You may either see a rewrite of a test, like a completely new test, or there have been times where they've done crosswalks from year to year when the standards have changed. They've done ways that you can determine what the score is and make it different. I do think another part of the discussion that we have had a little bit in the legislature, and this might come from that standards change, is looking at nationally norm reference tests and using those. So, you know, talking about an Iowa test like some schools even used to use not that long ago, or SAT, ACT. That's all been kind of a discussion. It hasn't made it all the way, but I think particularly depending on what these standards look like, and we don't know. But if there's a dramatic change and there's a need to change the test, then I think that might be part of the discussion.
So if the idea is to base it off of a norm reference test,
Which they'll never do.
then
It doesn't.
instead of a criterion-based test,
Right.
then no matter what, a certain percentage of people will always be failing, no matter what.
That's correct.
That's accountability.
That's and
That's the Florida model.
Right.
And also, just to another point you made about teacher retention, that is something that has been discussed. That is pretty much a crisis in all 67 districts, having teachers. You know, we have school starting and we have so many vacancies and we have substitutes in place of teachers because it's just so hard to get them. They did some work on teacher certification this last year to try to help to some extent, but I do think that is a continuing conversation. I think there's a recognition there that that's a problem.
We hear your frustration there, Nancy.
I'm not frustrated at you.
We
We
understand.
I
We
just feel
understand.
like there is some movement
Right.
in that area, because you can't say, I want to improve our teacher morale and not improve that.
Right.
You can't say that you even want to improve education and not improve that. Those two things, they all go together. So that's where my frustration lies. And that's not on you, but you can, I'll send you this video and you can play it for them, and that is fine. I will repeat this speech. I don't mind. It's just, those are big issues.
Big.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think that Mr. Kennedy's up next.
Well, first, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go run through a wall for Gina real quick. I had something else to say 5 minutes ago, but Gina's taking me off into a whole different. No, you're absolutely right. Everything you just said is exactly right, and that's why that is the basic problem when you have no diversity of thought in state government that creates these policies, which is part of and I would say the same thing if Democrats were in charge of everything. We'd probably have the same problem. I mean, we need that, but that's not for our lobbyists to work on. That's for our voters to work on. So, but I think, and this is really what I wanted to ask you about, Reverend Golden, to come back to your point though real quick, I think that idea, because Dr. Hopes brought up the point about including pre-K, certified pre-K teachers in the education code as the definition of a teacher, which I wanted to bring up as well. Reverend Golden, you took it a step farther to say, why don't we just bring all of this into the public education system, which I think is an even greater idea, because there's already incredible oversight, you know, and the models are in place instead of, you know, this money going through public agencies with elected boards instead of being parsed out to, you know, little nonprofits who may not be as accountable. But this is Florida, so let's deal in the reality of where we are. And to Gina's point, and I'd like to hear what you guys have heard about this so far. There's been some rumblings between Corcoran and between Governor DeSantis about a dramatic pay increase for teachers. I mean, of course, I'll believe it when I see it, because I don't, you know, how are we going to go from?
That was our good stuff at the end.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
You always lead with the good stuff.
okay. Well, I'll let you guys get to it then. But Gene, you've already said it well. But I think you know, we have to be realistic about the political environment that we're in and kind of the educational, the laboratory that we are for the rest of the country to see what policymakers can get away with. Because if you get away with it in Florida, then 17 other states, then their state legislatures jump on it. So I mean, you're absolutely right. This is really important stuff, because we really do lead a lot of states in this kind of move toward privatization and these two unequal systems. That's why I think instead of bringing public schools down to charters when it comes to construction standards, how about we just bring charters up to us for construction standards? So I may have clapped prematurely, but that's the only thing I wanted to get at was the teacher pay issue.
You hit it. Remember when I said at the beginning that the commissioner was being very aggressive with his agenda? That was part of that aggressive agenda. The Department of Education's proposed budget came out about a week ago, and included was it, and you may have seen something, $73 million. In other words, getting the largest increase that teachers have seen in pay raises. Yeah, that's included, and to come out with that is, I think, tantamount to really say a lot, because you can say the Republican or anything else, but to have a Republican commissioner and a Republican governor's, you know, leadership to say we're going to have the largest increase, you know, I think that says a lot. Now, you know, the other way it comes back, it's got to wait till it gets through the House and the Senate, but I think the commissioner has some good relationships there in the House.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, sir.
Sean, a quick follow-up question. That number you just used, one of the things
Make sure that was the right number.
No, whatever the number is. That's not it. But one thing I did see over the weekend is that, and I apologize, I don't remember who put this out, but that the effort of the legislature would be over the next 10 years to go from 45th or 46th in teacher pay to number 1. I mean, that's probably impossible, and even the number that you bring up, I guess my question was, even if that number is roughly correct, where do you think that would put us
Well, and I just preface this, not to give good news with bad news, but also what came out around that same time is that the forecast has not come out the best either for the Florida legislature. You know, $500 million less is expected in the 2019, into the next budget that we'll be preparing in the 2020 session, and then another $500 million after that. I only preface it, you're right, to get to that level over a 10-year, I'm not going to say they can't do it. That's going to take a huge commitment on many legislatures years ahead. But your last question was, and I probably missed.
No, that's okay. No, even if we had the numbers that you've all heard in discussions, what kind of per teacher raise would that equate to in the next 1 or 2 years?
We should have been prepared. What was the amount per teacher raise? Do you remember?
I don't know.
But again, take whatever was there before. They proposed the largest in history. So whatever is the highest, that's percentage that they've ever brought down before, that would be higher.
So 5 crumbs instead of 4.
Yes.
Okay, let's go, Board Member Hopes, then Board Member Golden. Okay.
Thank you. So 2 things. One is, rather than look at it the way Mr. Kennedy looked at it, it's like, we're like trying to lead the nation in elevating the education, continuing to improve the education system and funding it. And I do believe this year, legislatively, is going to be the year of education from a funding perspective. And these 2 respective leaders, have talked for a long time about investing in education in a new way. The only thing I'd like to say about the whole, number 1 in teacher salaries is it's got to be adjusted for things like cost of living and taxes and all that sort of thing. But I think we are going to see a significant increase. I want to go back to the comment about the dual enrollment. Because first of all, you know me, I'm a strong proponent of dual enrollment, and I do believe that it's probably appropriate to expand it, lower that threshold for GPA to allow students to both challenge themselves and be challenged for the rigors of that. But as you're aware, my former colleague when he was on the Board of Education and I, when I was on the USF Board of Trustees, created the funding for districts to pay the colleges and universities for dual enrollment. Now I find myself being the one that is paying that money that we sought. So I just want to make sure that we keep in perspective as we expand it. There is a cost. There's when we have both, there's a cost in the books and the materials when we're teaching it in our schools. And so we really need to have that funding because, as as one of the 3 educators up here who started off in 8th and 9th grade, but now I teach, at the university level, these books are expensive. And we only get a few years out of them because then the course changes. So we need to ensure that with this expansion, which I believe is a good thing, that we've got the funding in place, both for the materials as well as any professional development we need to provide to our current faculty to be credentialed at either the colleges or the universities. And then also the funding that we then have to pay out for our students that attend the dual enrollment courses on the 2 campuses. Also, ensure that the commissioner understands that, like the University of South Florida has a 3.5 GPA requirement, I think, for admissions. So they need to be motivated to have a different standard for these dual enrollment students who are still in high school versus somebody that's applying from Ohio or whatever. And I think State College is what, 3.4?
Some can be even higher. I think University of Florida is even
3.0 at State College and 3.5 at USF. So we need to have a meeting of the minds there to at least have that trial period. And a student's either successful with the additional challenges and rigor or not. But I certainly support the expanding of dual enrollment. But we really have got to focus on funding, whether it's a reimbursement from DOE or something like that.
They used to give us the FTE, and then they took that away.
Correct.
So we used to get it, and then now they just give it to them. So they just need to reinstate how it was prior, and then we would be covered.
So just, that language came directly from the commissioner to Representative Artie and Zika, who filed, and of course, they did enter the.
So when we did the funding thing, they took the FTE away, plus you had to give money?
Once upon a time, if our students, that there are registered
right, of course.
students, we used to get the FTE even if they were attending a college. And see, we're spending the money on the tuition, so now they do not give us the FTE.
They get the FTE and the money?
FTE and
Yes,
the money.
yes.
Oh, well, we really have to fix that. That was not, it was
It does
intended, at
not
least from
seem
Mr.
fair.
Colon and I.
That's
But
why
I think
it
you
was.
instated that. I think it was fine until you did that.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it. So, let me just. let me
But if
just
they
go back.
reinstated how it once was.
Yes, ma'am.
It would take care of it.
So, real quick, so even though they would drop it down to 2.5, you would still have to pass the same test to enter the program that those at 3.0. So that kind of somewhat secures. Their belief was that this kind of expanded it to those in a lower socioeconomic status who would be at an advantage of this and not have the opportunities of some of those at 3.0. There's also discussions about the private schools, about being able to utilize due enrollment and not have to pay for it. I would expect that part also to come up during the session. Everybody's eyes should roll and look up at that. That would be a huge cost. How it started last year, if you all remember too, they said, let's implement this and see what the impact is, and we'll come back and fund it next year. That's insane, and that's kind of what stopped it right there, because you also had you all and also the college system that would have been doing it and not being funded for it. So that's how it ended last year. Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Okay, Board Member Golden.
I want to go back to the issue of paying teachers more than they've ever been paid before, because I don't think that stands in isolation. You all are our lobbyists. You lobby for this school board. Is that what it is? You have other clients, other customers. I appreciate the commitment that this governor and this Commissioner of Education has made to increase teacher compensation. But I believe unless we speak out, or unless school boards speak out, or however we do it, the FPA speaks out, we're going to wind up getting more money for teachers and less protection for public education. And so, for my money, I'm interested in more money for teachers in public education. I'm not interested in just increasing the financial remuneration that comes from being in teaching, because in Florida, under this governor and under this Secretary of Education, Commissioner of Education, I agree with you, the propensity is to move toward privatizing education. So after all these years of people laboring in school systems, in the public school system, my mother was one for 42 years, my father was one for 35 years, and now we're going to pay teachers more than we ever paid them before, but we're going to let them teach, not in a public school system, but anywhere they want. And we're going to fund it like we want. So if you're our lobbyist, okay, I hope that somebody will take the message, don't just increase the pay, also increase the commitment to the places where teachers teach in these public schools all across this state. So you can't give with the right hand and take away with the left hand. And that's what's happening. And that's what's been happening. And we're easing toward the privatizing of education in the state of Florida. And so if you're our lobbyist, just say that Reverend Golden, who's way out in left field, thinks that it's good that you want to pay teachers more, but only if you're paying them to improve the quality of the public school system. So it gets awfully quiet up here sometimes. But that's okay, because the reality is that the few children that we serve and that we try to build up all kinds of ways in which we're going to serve them in private schools are being served at the expense of the many children in public schools. So I don't want us to walk out of here to the siren song of, yeah, we're gonna pay teachers more than they've ever paid them before, and find out that that comes at the cost of, but we're going to allow teachers to have the same choices that now children have, or the same choices that parents have, in terms of where you can go and get the most out, and we'll fund any school. And I don't think that that's, I don't think that that's healthy for Florida. I think it's time we lost our #1 ranking as the legislature to watch on how you can get the most out with putting the least in. And we don't want to start putting the most in. What is that thing? I don't want to be the big dog with the little bone that saw the little dog with the big bone and went after the bigger bone and lost everything. So that may not be the sentiment of my colleagues, but I am absolutely committed to making sure that public education rises up. Because those statistics that we were talking about going from 45th to 1st, that wasn't just any kind of school system. Those were public school systems. And there's a reason we're at 46, because we don't pay attention enough to what the needs are for public education is in the state of Florida. So, I don't know whether that's a motion, resolution, a commitment, whatever it is. That's the message as my lobbyist that I want you to take back. I welcome as much money as possible going into public education, but I resist wholeheartedly the efforts to take the public school system and privatize it.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Board Member Kennedy?
Just one more quick one. Does this happen to you guys with every board you get in front of? They just sit up here and yell at you, and you're the reason for all our problems? Yes. All right, good, it's not just us.
Kevin keeps taking more steps.
Yeah, pretty soon he's gonna be out the door. Just one more real quick, and I know we talked about this one for the past few years, but the state's requirement that you must have exited the system for a year before you can re-enter without the FRS penalty. Is there any movement on that?
There was a bill that was filed last year, at least on the Senate side, that possibly was going to address that, not for the security officers, but just talking about retired teachers. Ultimately, that did not gain any traction. Simultaneously, per the meeting that we all had, we considered getting a study done, actuarial study, if you'll recall, that can be requested by somebody high up in the Senate and the House. That, unfortunately, we were ready to kind of ask for that to be done. That might have run afoul of the legislation that was filed. It wasn't a senator that we approached, but it could have run afoul of that at the same time that that bill was trying to work its way through session. And so I do expect that that's something we're going to be actively engaged on. Obviously, teacher certification is part of teacher retention, so is bringing back our best and brightest without having that waiting period. So I do expect that that's something that we'll be having discussions about this coming year, whether that's that if the study be necessary. I think that that bill would have made it and could make it a lot further if we get the study done, because as we've taken this train before, we've realized that the first stop is that study. So I'm hoping we can request that and get that taken care of this year, and hopefully that won't run afoul of a bill, and either come back and address that this session, or if we have to, the following session. We'll be having those discussions and keep y'all updated.
But last year, there was just no House member picked it up?
Right, and then, that's correct. It was not a, it was, it,
Get any traction.
right, and that was, again, we were kind of working on the side of the study and looking for getting the study done, because we were told that's what needed to happen first. So by the time that bill came out, you know, the study could have, yeah, right.
But I do think also, as part of that conversation, as Corinne mentioned, is retired sheriffs and police and that as well, if you're looking at that for like a guardian type of, you know, solution for districts, because you'd have someone who has law enforcement experience. There have been some districts who've been interested in that. So that's been part of that discussion too. That wasn't in that bill, but that has been something that's been
It wasn't
discussed.
in the bill, but it would be in the study that we're requesting be done. That it would look at both sides
Yes.
of the house.
Yes, and as the school safety issue we know is gonna continue to be part of the discussion, so, you know, I expect we'll talk about that more too.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple comments. I think that it's been a great discussion. I think there's been, you know, eloquence here about our points. I think that this district is grateful, you know, for Commissioner, Cochran's, support and the governor's support of this district in particular of recent events in supporting, quality, public education. And you can send that message, to them. We've tried to make that, very clear. The part about teacher pay is very important. I think the availability of teachers is very important. Their perception, the respect that this state, gives, to teachers is reflected to some point in the pay. Does the state respect, teachers enough to enter teacher college? And we've had a significant drop-off of students applying for teachers' colleges, in all of our teaching schools, because, gee, the money isn't there. They can't even pay, for the loans that are necessary for getting that education. And so there's kind of a two-part. We want, and I felt that with our millage, here, that it was showing respect of this community for teachers and the profession and other, school employees. That was the biggest impact, I think, by our community coming together and saying, yes, they're that important. And the legislature saying that is important for present possible, teachers. And I applaud the administration in Tallahassee to think about that. It looks like it's going to come. But if they read about, gee whiz, teachers are respected a lot more in most of the other states, they don't feel that respected. And there ought to be expressed up there, a goal, that Florida's going to respect their teachers, more than at least most of the states. And I haven't heard that rhetoric. I haven't heard that goal. Okay, we're going to give you more than before, but, if before was very little, that doesn't communicate all the respect I think that the public school employees deserve. And that's kind of a message, I feel ought to resound up in Tallahassee. We are going to put us on track, to be maybe not number one in 5 years or something, but we're going to work very, hard to let, teachers and public school employees know that they're going to be, up in at least in the top 10 or something. We often are compared with top 10. And it ought to be, with teachers at least. I mean, everybody wants to be number one. Academically, we're moving that. We're done really great. We've been told, financially, we've got our house in order. And we think that the priorities of public spending ought to be put in order with respect to just not only now, but for the future of having education. And we believe that public education is a foundation, for what goes on in this state, for democracy. And we'd like to have, our leaders in Tallahassee put their arms around that belief as well and express it and repeat expressing it and vote to express it. Don't just say it, do it. That's how you prove it. And that's my thoughts along that line. You have this handout, and you touched on many of these things that in the top part, 1 through 6, that the administration, has put down about more funding, and we're talking about, we like to think we have the best technical college in the country. I mean, we do a terrific job, and we have the facilities, for providing nursing, RN degrees. But that ran into a blow. It's been talked about. The state colleges don't like that particularly. I guess it's time to say, state colleges, what's wrong with a little competition here? And what are we going to do to meet that need? And there's a great need, for nurses. And we have the facilities, and I hope that message gets through to all legislators. If they want to have the people qualified to take care of the citizenry, and state colleges don't have enough, and the regular colleges don't have enough, positions to fill that need, aren't we supposed to address the needs of the people of this state? why not have those that are qualified in our technical colleges do it? There really wasn't much argument. It's just, okay, you know, we're not going to abandon the state colleges, but those are my comments on the construction. We talked about that. We have about half an hour, and we got to shut down to others. But those are my comments. Does anybody else have a last? Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Minor, I just wanted to express my support for the draft as we have it here. You guys know how much I love Manatee Elementary, so I just wanted to tie number 4 back into number 2, because they're really kind of the same two ways of attacking the same issue in Title I neighborhoods. But the legislature has already made a commitment to community partnership schools. It's a proven network through the state that the legislature believes in, so I think I appreciate you guys including that on the draft. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but and we covered a lot of this already, but I just wanted to express my support for the whole document as it is.
Okay. Any other? Thank you all. Okay, sure.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Just one thing I did want to mention, Manatee did benefit from compression funding the last 2 years, but it's just been a 1 year. It is not something that has been, you know, a long-term thing. So we'll certainly, you know, it goes without saying, we'll be advocating on your behalf for that as well. That was about $2 million, I believe, last year. So.
I also just want to thank Kevin and your staff and administration. We all had a phone call and reviewed all this with you, and we think we're going to have a good session. So thank you.
You're all going to be in Kissimmee in the next few days?
Yes, sir.
Hey, but Mr. Chair, if I may, I don't know if anybody knows this, but Sean is actually a member of the Manatee Schools family.
Yes.
His sister, I won't put her name out there. I forgot if I did this last year too, but and she'll kill me if I say her name. But
That's all right.
but Sean's sister is an AP in our school district, so.
And my son and I both went here, so absolutely. Yes, sir.
Sean was almost,
Product of,
Sean was almost on the school board once.
he was.
1998.
Okay,
Say again?
1998.
yeah.
Oh, my God.
I know.
I don't know. I can't remember who you ran against. I forget Barbara Harvey's
That
name.
woman's name is a hallowed institution.
Okay.
This is Barbara Harvey. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? I mean, God bless her.
You
I
should've-
remember that,
Should have
though.
talked
Okay.
with me.
I know, sir.
could've-
Okay,
could've
thank
told
you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, student progression plan. Okay.
The progression plan. My hero. Whoa.
Thanks.
Oh, my Lord.
Okay. We have a couple advocates regarding this topic. Do we have extra copies of this latest version? For Mrs. What? They're available in the back row? Okay. Okay.
Is this the same stuff that we have in our email?
Not completely. If there was an extra one placed in front of my seat, that would be an extra that you are welcome to share, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. I think I got an extra.
I don't think they got what I got.
No, it would have been when Ms. Boyce disseminated it.
Just, anybody need one? You got it.
Okay.
May I begin, Mr. Chair?
please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Minor, board members, as well as Superintendent Saunders. This afternoon, I approach you regarding the review of our student pupil progression plan. A reminder that this process began during the summer. You received a workshop July 25th. It was presented by Dr. Kim Organic, as well as by by Shirley Hurley. And so at that time, there were some questions. As a matter of fact, comments were made from the public, and those were received by you all as well as by the curriculum staff. At that time, it was placed on the agenda for August 13th. At that time, you'll remember that unfortunately some of the red line documents were not available for review. And so comments came in that evening as well that have been addressed and been posted for public review during that time. Which brings us to this meeting because on August 13th, you all requested another workshop to make certain that we address several areas of our student progression plan. So what I have in the PowerPoint is not completely the same, there we go, as you've had before. I want to begin with a review of this Florida statute that addresses student progression plans. You have the authority to adopt rules. These are rules that are implemented in the progression plan that they are requirements for students in kindergarten through grade 12. The progression plan for Manatee County defines criteria for graduation, participation in graduation, promotion, intensive remediation, course offerings, evaluating student performance, and reporting to students and parents. This is based on Florida Statute 1008.25. This is not a day-to-day document. These are not the documents that we would use for procedures on a day-to-day basis. These are the actual rules that are established and based on statute that make certain that our students progress through Manatee County schools. So with that focus, there were some special considerations that you reviewed as early as the 25th of June. And having reviewed that video, I know that Reverend Golden had many questions, as did many of the rest of you. And in the essence of time, because we do have a lot of areas to focus on tonight, I'd like to quickly review the special circumstances and run through those. The footers are changed certainly to reflect the new year. We've got a cover page that reflects the new year, and several edits are included. Primarily, the edits are addressing the updates based on legislative action. So the bulk of the changes began with legislative impact and rulings. And of course, our page numbers change every time that we make changes within the document itself. The next few pages are nothing new. You reviewed that once again on June 25th as well. That it has to do with your academics, your advising for struggling readers, moving through the CTE graduation pathway with the 18 credits, and then moving into some additional legislative requirements that are addressing our ELA, our English Language Arts, areas towards the standard diploma.
Okay, Vice Chair Messenger.
Sorry. In the PowerPoint, I know we're short on time, which I'm really glad I sent you all my list of questions. But one of the things I didn't put in my list was on page 60, you said that you added the 18 credits, but that is actually not redlined in, maybe it's redlined in this copy now that you give me, but the emailed copy that I got earlier this week or last week or whenever I got it, the most recent one that was redlined, it's not actually on there. It only says CTE graduation pathway. It does not have the section next to it that says 18 credits.
Because that's not new. 18 credit rule's not new.
But it says that that's being added here, so that's why, I understand that may not be new, but it says it's being added and it's not on there, that's all I'm saying.
And it
And maybe
is
I'm-
redlined in a section, my apologies.
Bottom of page 60.
Thank you, at the bottom of page 60.
Or the top of page, sorry.
But there is also another section that
62,
highlights.
I guess, I'm sorry. I'm looking at
Correct,
the
that
wrong
would be
page.
64 in the document I have, so
Oh my gosh,
one
okay.
page forward or behind. It addresses the CTE graduation pathway, and it is in red at the top of the page. So that is the language that came from the legislative update. And I'd be glad to share my copy, but I do have notes, so I'll need it back in a second.
I guess the one I have in my email is different than, no, what I'm talking about is, I think it's different section.
So that addresses the CTE, and there were some parent comments that have come in as well as board comments relative to the 18 credits.
That's the part I'm talking about. I guess on my emailed copy, it doesn't have the 18, that's all I'm saying.
said her.
Just
And I
this-
believe it was a parent who pointed that out to us at the last board meeting, so that has been corrected since the last board meeting. The 18 credits are definitely included at the bottom of the page.
Here, it's in this one.
I'm sorry, I know you have lots of documents that are in front of you. So if we proceed through the legislative requirements, not only the CTE, but you go on to the next page. Sorry, I'm talking and I'm not changing my pages. You have the documentation that is on page 64 in front of you and on the screens at this time. That does reiterate the 18 credits, as well as it outlines the earnings of your 18 credits. And if I'm going too rapidly, please, thank you. So we'll move on to the next page, which addresses our successful completion of Algebra 1A and 1B, and the fact that a certified counselor or a principal's designee must advise students that state universities may require for admission 3 additional mathematics courses, at least as rigorous as Algebra 1. And so that is spelled out very nicely here, and our high schools are certainly educating students when it comes to this requirement. Additionally, for section G, page 64, it refers to how students may substitute a credit in computer science as identified by a rigorous equivalent, and that is by the commissioner for one mathematics requirement except for Algebra 1 and geometry, and the computer science credit may only be used to substitute one course, either a mathematics or a science course. Moving through the legislative requirements a little bit more, again in section G, the industry certification in 3D rapid prototype printing may substitute up to 2 credits of a mathematics requirement. So we're exchanging some of the CTE requirements and providing options for students, with the exception of Algebra 1. They cannot switch out that Algebra 1 if the commissioner identifies the certification as being equivalent in rigor. So then the bottom section, the added language, is that a student who earns credit in a computer science course may substitute the computer science credit for 1 science credit, except Biology 1. So it's defining where we may offer students additional options, but what the requirements are for rigorous completion of courses towards certification. Yes.
Now, I don't know which page number it's really gonna be on, because in my notes it was page 21. But it was something that I emailed to you about diagnostic assessments. And one of the response you gave back to me was diagnostic assessments are never to be used for a grade.
That is accurate, yes ma'am.
And that's not in here? Is that an understanding among all the schools?
It should be. It has not been in here in the past, and since I received it late today, it has not been added. But our schools have never used diagnostic. Other assessments are used. However, the diagnostic assessment is not. It never has been used for a grade.
Just gotta go back to, my page numbers are different than what I got
On page
here.
23.
23.
And I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Yes, every time this is printed, the
I don't know,
page
like-
numbers are off by 1 or 2.
Page 23.
Yeah, you probably had a really hard time with my notes if they were like on a
I
different
did.
page number than what, I went off of what I got emailed. Look at you, you told me the wrong page number too.
No, I'm just searching for the word diagnostic on the PDF.
Oh, you're so smart.
It's there 12 times. Cos 3.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find that actual page where that was on there. I just can't recall what was listed there, were there diagnostic assessments listed there?
You indicated page 21.
21. Yeah, oh, okay, so there's not a list of diagnostic assessments. So my question would be then, what is considered a diagnostic assessment? For instance, just So that
Well, a diagnostic could be your iReady diagnostic that the beginning of the year assessment for elementary could be an example of a diagnostic.
and that's never counted as a grade in any school?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
How about any other pre-test? Because I would consider that perhaps a diagnostic. If you have a pre-test,
a
that really is.
pre-test, and I'll use science because we are truly focusing on 5th and 8th grade to
Sure.
enhance our science instruction and our grades. And in those areas, we are extending an opportunity for teachers to utilize a pre-test. For example, in 6th grade, that would just be an indicator of how are our students doing as they've not really been exposed to that content yet, towards 8th grade. And then in 7th grade, it would cover 6th and 7th grade content, and it would be comprehensive in 8th. That could be an example of a pre-test. That information is then utilized by teachers to determine where the gaps in the education may be so that they can design their lessons to reteach content or standards that have not been fully understood and comprehended in the classroom in preparation, for example, that example in 8th grade.
And I see the value of that. As a teacher, I would see the value in having that data so that I know what I need to teach and which things I need to work on and whatever, build upon. I just want to make sure that that's not being graded.
To my knowledge, it is not. I have heard that tests along the way as an incentive to do as well as you can. Teachers have utilized that with a grade and then it changed it out with your lowest grade if they're as an incentive to do an extra project or other work within the class.
What?
I was saying I would do that all the time. Like, hey, try to do well on this.
Absolutely. Teachers
Well, back
want
then
to
it was still
motivate their students
it was still the trial run of the EOC. It was not the official EOC yet. It was kind of the testing year, and just to get them to take it seriously, but like, hey, if you do well on this, it'll, it can only help you. Is basically what I told my students. So do your best and all. So I mean, that rings true to me because
I'm not saying she's not. I'm
And that's
not
actually
proof.
more
I
the
just-
secondary.
Oh yeah, no,
understand.
I didn't mean to insinuate that either, but
I'm just trying to understand.
Okay. Yes, please proceed.
I think you have another question.
Okay, Board Member Golden.
Yes, sir. I do not have the capacity to delve into the details of this, but I would like to know about the process. You stand before us today, and what you have given us is a draft student progression plan. And I have here 2 formats for the change summary
Yes, sir, you do.
that are being put in place this year. Is there a comment period or an opportunity for parents, for the public to make suggestions, recommendations, concerns that they might have for the upcoming 2020-21 progression plan? Is there a timeline?
When it was posted in June, there are 30 days, and most recently, there has been a timeline. We have received an immense number of comments that have come through, been read, each and every one reviewed and determined whether or not the content is already being addressed in our pupil progression, our student progression plan, or if it needs to be reviewed for consideration of modification. So yes, sir, there have been opportunities to generate ideas and comments from the total community, not just parents.
Okay, so when that comment is received from June, when does that period close?
It's a 30-day posting, the regulation, and I'd have to look to my left to our board to determine since I did not join you until July 1.
Okay, but there's you understand it?
Yes, sir, there is a process by which we obtain input. We want input, and then we can review. There are many comments that have come forward that are logistical. Perhaps you could reword something. This may not sound appropriate. My child has experienced, and we are considering those comments.
Is there feedback to the originator of the comment?
Typically, yes, not always. It depends upon the timeline. Several have been received in the last 12 hours, and I,
I want to talk about the process.
okay?
Okay, because you say I have 30 days, starting in June, to put my thoughts on paper about the upcoming student progression plan.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you, after that 30-day period, what time frame is allowed to respond to the originator of a suggestion to say, this is the greatest idea that we've had in the school system since sliced bread, or to say, this is the most inane thing we've ever heard? How long does that timeline go?
The timeline incorporates the 30 days. If you were to process a request of me, Reverend Golden, let's say within the first 10 days, you would expect a response within that 30 days. If on day 30 you generate an inquiry just prior to the time we are presenting this to the board, you probably have not received a response.
Okay. And so what you've presented to us are the changes that are within that process, the 30-day process.
Yes, sir.
Going back and
The one that is on the PowerPoint is connected to legislative changes. The one in, I believe it's your left hand right now. Yes, sir. You have a color copy. I do not.
Yes.
It is entitled 2019-20 SPP Change Summary, and in parentheses it says 8/27/19.
Okay, and that's what.
That's the most current, and this did indeed provide us with an opportunity to review community comments and take those into consideration for change.
Okay.
For example, the added language under section E, number 3, page 60, where the CTE graduation pathway, the 18 credits was missing for some reason on that page on August 13th. It is now included, as we have all seen a minute ago. So that was one of the changes that was called to our attention, and it was placed there. Let's see, try and have another one that came from the community. There have been questions regarding the verbiage for parents who may submit a written waiver for the intensive instruction. And when it was written, it said, parents may submit a written request for a waiver. The waiver is now included in the SPP, and so the language has been changed for the middle school, high school, and ESE sections of the plan. And the written request, the line has been drawn out, and a parent must complete the waiver. But it is attached as Appendix A at this time. They do not have to have a written request to obtain the form. The form was not always included in the SPP.
That's what's Appendix A.
Yes, sir, that would be accurate.
Okay. Who did this?
That was designed prior to my arrival. It was a team of individuals who were working with the student progression plan.
Okay. But this would have been part of the 30-day timeline to make changes.
There were many comments regarding Appendix A, yes, sir.
And so this is what you're presenting today.
That
as
is
a result
accurate.
of all of that.
That is accurate, yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. I think I'm not an educator here, high education or lower education, whatever it is, but I think I understand policies and timelines to make recommendations to changes.
Yes, sir.
And I think we have postponed this twice now to vote on it to allow.
At least once.
No, it's twice. This is number 3 here that's coming up.
This is the second workshop. This will be the third time it's on the regular board agenda.
Okay then. All right. Thank you so very much for your indulgence.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy.
Mr. Hope said us. Yeah, Dr. Hope
Okay.
said us first.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to go to the Appendix A, the waiver.
Perfect.
Yes.
If you don't mind,
Oh, go ahead.
I have an alternate, as long as you're on that too. I have an alternate version of that Appendix A that I'd like to distribute to everybody.
Okay.
Just so you can see the two of them side by side. Sorry to take the floor away from you.
While we're passing that out, and this may be more for the superintendent, you know, in reading this and reading the waiver, I'm still.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I think that this ought to be available to anyone who wishes it is in the audience so they can follow along with it.
the appendix in the back?
I think, talk about Mr. Kennedy's, I
Oh,
guess.
what he's
I'm talking about Mr. Kennedy has a proposal, I guess as an alternate to what our speaker has provided. Is that correct, Mr. Kennedy?
Michelle, I'm sorry, did you say there are copies or no? My version? Okay.
Okay.
So while that's being passed out,
So what's coming down to you is my version of Appendix A, where I have incorporated some of your original copy, but I've added some language that, that I've borrowed, give it a chance, that I've taken from Sarasota County, in fairness, that Mrs. Mendel took from Sarasota County, and then just made a few minor edits. I just want you to look at them side by side.
right, so aside from that, because I had a preamble to the form, I'm still a little bit, when I read the waiver, I'm still not satisfied, based on the language in here, that we're not necessarily addressing those students. Most of the students that I've heard from or heard from their parents are pretty much college-bound students. And there seems to be a question about whether it's a lack of knowledge or maybe even just test-taking skills. And so I'm still troubled that even in looking at the language of this waiver, we may have situations where it's not an issue of the student not having the knowledge and the ability to demonstrate knowledge attainment to their teachers and counselors. It may be more of a test-taking skill issue, and I find it really hard that somebody has to sit in a whole year-long course to master test-taking skills. Because, I mean, I can use an analogy. You know, when I took the airline transport pilot reading the written exam, which covers everything you need to be able to fly, you know, a Delta jet to Europe. I mean, it's really more test-taking skills, because the FAA is horrible at writing questions. And so literally, it took like 6 hours of sitting in front of a computer, going through every question they could possibly ask, and what the answers were, and then you take the test. And I do have to believe that we have many of these students that I'm hearing from parents that it's more an issue not of the state exam, it's just test-taking skills. And I know you enhance that by taking tests, but I'm troubled to think that we have college-bound students that are spending an entire semester or an entire year in missing out on other courses, when really they need some after-school help with preparing for the SAT or one of the alternative exams, and taking tests. I mean, it's like taking the medical college admissions test. It's all about test-taking skills.
Want me to respond?
Mr. Chairman, so yeah, what the process is.
Okay, just a minute. Do we have copies for our speaker here to look at?
Mr. Kennedy provided me with a copy of
Okay,
his
you have a copy. Okay.
recommendation. Yes, sir,
And
I have a copy.
the superintendent has a copy? Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
okay. Mrs. Mendel, do you have a copy?
I apologize.
Okay.
Send it to me.
And Mrs. Patterson?
Right at 3 o'clock, I'm sorry.
Okay, is there anybody else in the audience who would like a copy so you can follow along?
And also on that question, I'm sorry.
Okay, I want to make sure, since I think this is an important, document that we're talking about, and I think that anybody who's interested ought to have it in front. And I would like to have administrative feedback as we're going along as to, well, yeah, that's okay, or no, that doesn't work because A, B, C.
In all fairness, Mr. Chairman, I'm not talking about this document yet, and we had a train of thought, and it got disrupted because I think you were thinking about the document, and I'm talking about something totally different.
Okay, well, I should do a better job of taking charge. I think that Mr. Kennedy, thought that you were going to talk about something like this and was putting it on the table for your consideration. So go ahead and talk about, what you wanted to address.
So in addition to that, and just for my own information, much like students that need additional time for taking like the ACT and SAT, for the for any of the Florida State assessments, does that apply also?
Well, I can answer
So
both
two questions, sorry.
I can answer both. In the remediation courses, part of what they do teach is test-taking preparation. Specifically, when you're in high school, we do a lot of ACT and SAT prep in addition to. There are multiple ways to get remediation. And even though I know many parents do not want to have their child in an intensive course, it is part of the requirement that we offer Tier 3 and Tier 2 services. It's also a requirement to make sure they graduate and they're able to pass one of those tests or a concordant exam. So back to, do they have to stay in it for a whole year? If you're in high school, absolutely not, if you have a concordant score. So we have many facets that you can have a concordant score. You can take the ACT, you can take the SAT, and if you are in 11th or 12th grade, the PERT is still applicable to you for Algebra 2. We also have different ways of taking remediation. You can take it with a direct instructor in the class. You can also sign up and take it through Florida Virtual. You can take it online. Doesn't have to be with a teacher in front, but the Tier 2 and Tier 3 services are to provide all of those things. I will tell you that many of our schools do a pretty good job by the time they're in 12th grade, getting them across the line. As we all know, if they're getting into high school, level 1 or level 2, and it's been perpetual, they're having to catch them up years and years behind. But yes, test-taking strategies is part, but it doesn't have to be just the state test. If I have a student, and I think I mentioned this with one parent that I was communicating with, I would suggest to them that they sign up for the ACT, sign up for the SAT. They're given on Saturdays. Takes about 3 weeks to get the scores back. Get the score back, they pass, they're out of the class. So we do have ways to make sure that they're providing assistance at what they need, where they don't have to stay in a class for a whole year or a whole semester.
So we could ensure that they're told that they can take it through Florida Virtual or something.
Absolutely. In addition to, they have to be multiple years deficient before they're placed. That's why it says 2 or more consecutive years. So if it's just 1 year, they don't have to be in remediation, because 1 year things happen in 1 year. Excuse me, can someone?
Okay, I'm sorry. Either withhold your comments or go outside and chat. Thank you.
Chair.
Now, in the state assessment, do they have, are students that are on an IEP, do they get additional tests?
If it's in their IEP, depending on what's in their IEP, they can have extended time. I will tell you, one of the things that the district has done since I've been here over the last handful of years is I purchase, I've done SAT and ACT, but the test for seniors that are non-proficient, if they have been in remediation and have done all the measures to try to graduate and it has not been fruitful, we pay for a test where it's done during the school day. So College Board gives districts the opportunity to purchase that. How is that different? Well, you're able to take it on your school site during the day. You don't have to pay. You don't have to come in on a Saturday. And we provide about 100 of those exams for every high school. And but if they are not receiving remediation and all the aids that they need, those students, they can still go pay for one, but these are those that have done everything. It's an extra benefit. In addition, the College Board has come up with a non-reportable ACT or SAT. What does that mean? It means they give extended time. You can't use it for admission into a university, but it does meet graduation requirements. And that's been in place last year and this year. We've had a tremendous amount of success, because what you will find, some of our kids can pass the ACT or SAT grade level and not the state test. What we tend to find in some cases is they're fast. They need more time for the test. The ACT test is real quick, and they're not used to that. So now with a non-reportable score, we've had a lot of success this past year with doing that.
so are we
So
doing-
we put in, I can't remember how many, we buy at least 600 of those tests, 100 per school. And
We do a good job of communicating that to
Oh,
parents and
yes.
students.
And it's given to those in October. And again, if we get those scores, they're out. They don't have to be in any type of intensive class whatsoever. So anytime we get a passing score, they've met graduation, because ultimately you guys are gonna hold us accountable for making, and the principals accountable for making, because in this county, if you don't meet the graduation requirement, you do not walk across the stage, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Board Member Golden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This seems to be probably one of the most vexatious parts of the work that we do, the student progression plan. And it's like nothing that is presented by our staff is satisfactory. And I don't like feeling like that. I don't like the feeling, and it's like, well, I'm not satisfied with this and I'm being ignored. And I can't do anything about the past, but it sounds as if probably part of the problem is that we don't devote enough time before we get here to deal with this. And so I know this is a workshop and I know we're not going to vote here, but one of the things that I would like to see is an increase from 30 days to 60 days for the opportunity to receive comment on the student progression. I know that doesn't do anything for last year. Probably not going to make anybody happy right now. But I don't like coming in here, sitting in here in this adversarial posture of being made to feel like we are not doing what's in the best interest of students. When we are all sitting up here committed to our respective views, but trying to do the best we can. And I don't think we need to rush. I think that what Mr. Kennedy has is probably a good idea, but I just got this just now. And some of the parents that want to review it just got it after I did. That's not fair. That's not right. And so I want to talk about something that matters, changing the process, because you're being unhappy about the outcome is not my problem. You're being unhappy about the outcome is your problem. My responsibility is to make sure that I do the best I can to give you the best outcome that we can. Now, I think we've done that. And Mr. Kennedy, I appreciate the fact that I have an appendix A that the deputy superintendent admits that she submitted to us, and she has a copy of yours.
That she just got
I
at 2
just
p.m.
received
today.
it.
She got it at 2 p.m. today. When she made her report, she didn't say anything about this, and it wasn't included.
I received it after the board workshop began, sir.
Now, let me explain something to you. I know what I'm saying. I'm saying that I got this as a part of the work that we continued for last month. I got this just now. That's not fair to anybody. It's not even fair to Mr. Kennedy. It's 5:15. We're getting ready to go into a board meeting at 5:45. So what I'm suggesting is, and the only thing that comes out of the workshop, because that's what this is that when we deal with the student progressive plan in the future, that if it starts on June 1st, that the cutoff date is not June 30th, but July 31st. And that then we would be more intelligently able to deal with a student progressive plan instead of this death by 1,000 cuts. That's not nice even.
Okay, thank you very much, Board Member Golden.
Thank you.
Yeah. My understanding is that this Appendix A is a very important document. I'm going to ask the superintendent if she agree with that.
Yes, sir.
And there's language in there and subtleties in there that affect our students. Now, I haven't studied Appendix A. Did you get this before this afternoon?
Mr. Kennedy's version?
Yes.
No, sir.
Okay. All right,
You got it at 2 p.m. also.
Well, I like it.
Well, okay.
I'm just, Board Member Golden brought up, well, gee whiz, just dropping it, is maybe not the best way to go about it, okay? And, I understand from Mr. Hopes, who's studied this, that he kind of likes Mr. Kennedy's too. But I certainly am not going to vote for something without the administration, having an idea to review it, to see if there's something from the administration's perspective that might be harmful, to students, in particular, or our operations. Here we are, we're supposed to vote on this tonight, correct?
There we go.
Okay, now just a second. I'm gonna ask Mr. Kennedy, if he might share with us how it differs, from the, Appendix A, which has been, provided to us by the administration. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. If anybody wants to talk to themselves, stand outside, please.
I think they are outside.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, why don't we both put, I'm writing K in the upper right-hand corner for Kennedy of Appendix A, and, okay, and Mr. Kennedy's going to explain to us, I guess, the differences. Now, this is, Kennedy. Is that, okay, we all got that. Maybe we can follow along. Okay, and you can tell us how it differs from the administration's proposal.
Sure, I would like to make an editorial comment first, that with regards to Appendix A, we terminated a charter school with less notice to the public than this appendix is getting. I just felt that needed to be said right
Okay,
now.
Mr. Kennedy, would you
So
please
no.
continue with this? I'm sorry, sir, we don't
I
have much
think
time.
that's a good point. We should give the public notice to consider our decisions.
Okay.
And we are giving this more notice and thought than we gave that. If you'll notice on the first paragraph, it says in parentheses MCSD, which means Manatee County School District. So that paragraph is exactly the same as the copy that Ms. Yost had available for us. The next paragraph is labeled SRQ, which, as I mentioned, took language from Sarasota County. I might have made a few minor edits to Sarasota's language from there. As you can see, the next paragraph is labeled MCSD, which means it is the same as Ms. Yost's waiver form. I added in the concordant table so that the parent who would possibly sign this waiver knows exactly what concordance score they would have to achieve. Under instructions, okay, under the concordant table, this is a little bit of a mix. I have instructions and then MCSD, but then I actually began to move things around a little bit here too, and I kind of took Ms. Yost's language and just moved things around a little bit. But you can see there that this is applicable for kids who are in 6th through 11th grade, which is identical to Ms. Yost's version. I then wanted to make a very clear list for the parent who's considering this to understand what they are putting, how they are possibly putting the student at risk of graduation or their options and so forth, which again is language that's in the student progression plan. It's in Ms. Yost's copy of her version of the waiver. And then if you flip over, same thing, kind of a mix of edits here. And then in bold, which I took that style from Ms. Yost, but the parent wishes to exempt their student from, and then I blank for the school year, which is the same. I added a check mark to check off intensive reading or intensive math. So one or both or whatever. And then they state that they have read the warnings, student name, parent signature, and then not that the principal has to approve it, but the principal has to acknowledge that they have seen it and they are aware that the student is taking that opportunity to get out of intensive instruction. So that's it.
Okay. Vice Chair Messenger.
I like it. But I have two things that I think should be just taken off the page.
Sure.
The first is the word instructions at the bottom. I actually don't think that's necessary. It just should say parents, guardians may submit a written request for waiver. I don't think you need the word instructions. I think actually it's kind of odd, there. And then please be warned. I don't think you need those
I
words.
wasn't crazy about it either, but
Exercising this option can, and
just some
then,
way to signify. like,
I'm
hey,
sorry, I've asked,
Are we not allowed to have a conversation? It's a workshop.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kennedy.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
those are the only two things. I really think this is good. I think that it makes it really clear what the parent would be jeopardizing, but, it allows for the freedom of the parent to really decide that, and it still has some acknowledgement by the principal, which I think is a nice middle ground, which is what is your specialty, Mr. Kennedy. You have a specialty. It was different than what I was gonna propose, but I think it's good. I don't have a problem with it. I think it was a good mix of everything, better than I could have thought of.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Messenger. Mr. Kennedy, you have further comments?
I also it kind of goes without saying, but I would also obviously delete my beginning of the paragraphs, the in parentheses stuff. And also down at the bottom on number 4, I would add the word only, be in effect only for the current school year, and must be refiled each subsequent school year if desired.
And we have a typo in this
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
that would need to be corrected.
His background is history, not English.
Okay. Could you provide some feedback as to Mr. Kennedy's proposal?
Absolutely. First of all, the typo is in SRQ, the second paragraph, second line that says course, and it's called intensive reading. So that's easy to repair.
Okay.
And aside from the FSA, for level 1, of course, there's the consideration of level 2, and that is still non-proficient. And so with the concordant scores, that could address that area.
I don't know what you're talking about, so can you be specific?
Third line.
The second paragraph, correct.
Okay.
These interventions shall be required for any student who scored a level 1 on the English language arts and/or a level 1 on the math portion of the previous year's FSA and/or any students who have been identified as having a significant deficit in foundational reading and/or math skills among their cohort peers.
Miss,
And so the concern I have there is the level 2 as well.
1 and 2.
but Mr.
Okay, you think that it should read level 1 or 2 in the third line?
Level 1 and 2, correct.
And
I
2.
believe our superintendent has a comment as well.
That, I was gonna point that, or if you wanted to say, because it does say, or any student who has identified as having a significant deficit amongst their peers. So if you saw gaps over a span of time, that would be a significant deficit. So that could capture that.
Mr. Minor, I have a question.
Okay, get right to you. Superintendent, do I understand that you think it might be improved if, in that, the fourth line of the second paragraph,
Well,
after the word deficit, adding the words among peers?
well, no, sir, it's in there, and maybe instead of a level 1, you just put non-proficient over a span of, if you have significant deficits in foundational reading or math skills among their cohorts, should really capture it, because those are really the people that you need explicit interventions.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to leave, Mrs. Mandel. You've been warned, okay? Okay, yeah. The, will you repeat the change of wording you would suggest that is consistent with what you believe Mr. Kennedy's trying to achieve here?
I guess I'm trying to figure out if you're trying to accomplish those that have gaps for a span of time or significant gaps, or are you looking at just level 1 students?
I was looking for students who are caught up in this now. So I was trying to bring over the essence of the original waiver. Whomever that waiver is trying to capture, that's who I'm trying to capture here. But I'm just trying to change from a principal approval to
Okay.
it becomes a parent approval that is filed with the school, and the school acknowledges that they received it.
Acknowledgement. Well, if that's the case, then I think you put level 1/2 because it pertains to both. And if what you want to do is have the principal acknowledgement and the parent signature, it accomplishes it. Because we don't want students in there that shouldn't be in there that hasn't have gaps over time. So if you're a 1-year non-proficient student, it doesn't pertain to them. So if you put 1/2, it pertains to those over, would that have significant deficiencies? So that means you're not putting them in if it's just 1 year. And then you leave the rest of it as you're suggesting on the form. I think if you did that, Mr. Minor, it accomplishes what the board is trying to do, and it captures those kids that are struggling over a span of time. If the parents sign the waiver, take it to the principal, it satisfies it.
Okay, is there any other parts of Mr. Kennedy's proposed waiver that you feel might raise problems for the administration?
I think they'll support that. I do like, we had words of the SAT, ACT, et cetera, but I do like having the chart spelled out. I think we can certainly live with those recommendations, and we'll make sure we communicate those to the administration.
Where I'm going with this is that the board is expected to, vote on this beginning in a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
And in order to put this into one document with the changes that have been discussed and seems to be, favored by you and Mr. Kennedy and can we do that? And now, this, Mr. Kennedy, this is on your computer, correct? Okay. And in order to, what's been, discussed and suggested in the last, few minutes, are these edits that you can, put into?
Already done.
They're already done. Can you email that to, Michelle?
Sure can.
Okay, and to have, copies made, for everybody here. And if there's any other question, that may be something incorporated in what the board is being asked to approve this evening. Now, okay, it's coming to Michelle right now, and it doesn't have to be the final, but it's the final attempt with respect to this particular issue that we have from the workshop, and after review at the meeting tonight, if it's still consistent with a majority of the members of the board, we could approve that as part of the proposal. Okay, Board Member Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I want to ask is, are there any other issues other than Appendix 1 that precludes us from moving forward on the
Okay.
student progression plan.
Yes, sir, I totally agree. Now, we sort of interrupted on this Appendix A, which seemed to be, appeared to me to be an important issue. Now, Vice Chair Messenger.
I think that there's still more conversation to be had about the elementary reading decision tree. However, I see what time it is, and I know that it's a public hearing later.
Yeah.
So is there a possibility that we discuss that during the public hearing, which is how we've been doing business for public hearings in the past? I mean,
My answer to that is yes, okay? And we can discuss it, we can make changes. My feeling was that this was, this Appendix A was very significant. It certainly reflected in the extent that Mr. Kennedy put a lot of work into having a proposal. And I think we've worked that out. As far as some other changes, certainly they can be made, during the course of the public hearing. Now, we got about 9 minutes before we go into meeting. I think we're going to have to adjourn right now to set up things for the meeting, and then we'll reconvene as a meeting in about 6 minutes. So, okay, thank you very much.